Good evening and welcome to the Westborough Select Board meeting called here on Tuesday, April 26th, 2022. I would ask all those that are able to please join me in rising and saluting the flag with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Folks have seen the agenda. It's been posted as required. I believe it's been running on Westborough TV, and for those in the room, if they want it, it is in the bin up here in the front if anybody wants to grab a paper agenda. Start off the evening tonight with open forum. Is anybody here for open forum? Okay. Seeing nobody for that, I'll move right along to the town manager's report.
Okay. As the board is aware, we've been working on the outdoor dining policy, so we met yesterday to finalize that, so we hope that will come before you in May. And we do have businesses that are already excited to take advantage of that. The select board retreat was on April 8th, and we're having a continuance of that scheduled for May 4th at 5:30. And that's to wrap up some goal setting that we had been doing on the 8th. ARPA funding, department heads were asked to provide some additional information for their proposed projects in the consultant portal. That's the portal that we learned about when we talked to the consultant before we had signed the contract. The internal finance team, so folks on the town side, just met today to review projects and to begin to form recommendations. We have a finance team meeting, which will include folks from the school and then also the chair of the finance committee on Tuesday, and we'll talk about that at that meeting. We had a new hire in the senior center start this month, Stephanie Keene as the outreach case manager at the senior center, who has over a decade of experience in the social work field. For town boards and committees, Islay McKendrick has resigned from the Disability Commission, and Richard Abrams has resigned from the Water Plant Treatment Board, so those positions are available. Also, we're reaching out to different boards and committees on their interest in renewing terms and using that per the committee handbook that the board had approved previously. In the finance department, we have a new assistant treasurer collector, Carly Ann Harvey, who started on Monday. The fourth quarter real estate and personal property tax bills are due on May 2nd. The water and sewer bills are due on May 16th, and demands for overdue excise tax bills will be going in the mail on April 22nd, due on May 6th. Bills can be paid online, in the office, USPS, or the drop box in front of Town Hall, and by phone using the designated number on the town's website. The assessor's office is preparing to send out the second and final mailing for income and expense requests, and the finance is working on submitting the second of 3 FEMA public assistance requests for COVID-related expenses. The DPW got a grant, the workplace safety grant for $9,600. 3 bids went out in March, and one was for the MassWorks project at Flanders Road. Also a water main replacement and the waste management request for information. And then in process is a town-wide road pavement, and then also we continue to work on the Regal Cinema RFP. The Recreation Department has partnered with the towns of Southborough, Grafton, Hudson, and Northborough to create an adult women's softball league. So there's 12 teams playing, 40 adult women in Westborough's 3 teams. The league started on the 24th. The program is important to Westborough as it supports the department's ongoing goal to offer more adult programming. Someone at this table may or may not be on the Grafton team. It's me. The recreation.
You're going down.
The Recreation Department is also having difficulty finding individuals to fill lifeguard positions at the beach this summer. 2019 pre-pandemic, the town had 19 lifeguards, but only has received 2 applications for the 2022 summer season. This is not a problem that's unique to Westborough or to municipalities. We're seeing that sort of across the board and looking for lifeguards. It's associated with an outcome of the pandemic, as individuals would have previously taken those courses. They weren't offered during the pandemic, or they didn't attend them. So inability to staff the beach with lifeguards will have an impact on the 2022 operations. So we'll keep you informed about that. In the town clerk's office, they're receiving a large amount of marriage intentions or weddings sent from other communities. They've had over 1,500 signatures on nomination papers to be certified since March. Late fees for dog licensing started on April 1st. Notary services have been provided for over 50 documents in the month of April. Each year, there are 45 plus fuel storage permits to relicense during April, so that process is ongoing. They're still receiving the census and street list forms. And then March through May are the busiest months of each year, and then they can catch up for the months in the fall. So that's my report.
Great, thank you. Because we're ahead of schedule, I did have a request, and because we ended that on the town clerk, to move up the first piece of item 14. Because, as you said, she actually has a marriage to attend to this evening, so she'd like to move that up if that's okay. She's not getting married. She is performing a marriage. So, Wendy, if you want to come up, this is the request for appointment for Sally Ward to the Registrar of Voters.
So Sally Ward, hi. Sally Ward came in, and I think all of you received a letter from her pretty much explaining everything, and I can't find that letter. So everything that's in it's true. I did read it. She's been a registered voter in Westborough as long as she's been here. She's been a registered Republican, which is what we need to fill Denny Drury's spot. So I would urge you to vote for her.
Thank you. And just to note, Sally couldn't, the reason we moved this up too is Wendy had indicated that Sally couldn't make it here tonight. She did submit her paperwork that we had in our packet, so that's why I chose to move that forward. Any questions for Wendy on Sally's appointment? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion to appoint Sally Ward as Registrar of Voters for a term ending April 30th, 2025.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor? It's 5-0, 5 being present.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move back then to our regularly scheduled program here. Next on the agenda, slightly early, but is the Veterans Advisory Board request to place flags, signs on the Rotary. Mr. Tepper.
Good evening. I trust you all have a copy of our proposal.
Yes, we do.
We'd be happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Introduce himself.
Yeah. Jim, can you just introduce yourselves for those watching on TV? They want to know who this good-looking guy is.
I will have to turn the camera. I'm Jim Tepper, the chair of the Westborough Advisory Board. Veterans Advisory Board, I have two other members of the board with me, Paul Horgan and Andy Turock.
Great, and just so the public knows that the Veterans Advisory Board has requested to place flags and signs in the Rotary for the following dates: June 25th through July 9th of 2022, so around Independence Day, and then October 26th, 2022 through November 12th, 2022. And the policy that the Select Board has, which was in our packet as well, allows this use with the approval of the Select Board, and that's why it's in front of us.
Correct.
So I will open it up if there are any questions from members of the board. Yes.
So, in the period from June 25th to July 9th, this is to celebrate the 4th of July.
I'm sorry, sir?
For the period of June 25th to July 9th, I assume that's around the 4th of July celebration?
Well,
Okay. So last year, we did receive a couple of emails from residents concerned that, well, every day is a good day to thank and support our veterans, that July 4th is a holiday celebrating independence and is not specific to the military or veterans, and expressed some concerns that the veteran signs diluted the celebration of July 4th. I don't have a particular opinion either way on this, but I just wanted to, raise that as a point for consideration.
All right. Thank you.
So as I recall from those messages, that it was more about the signs,
It's the signs, not.
not the flags, just to be very clear, that the signs, that the flags were recognized as being a beautiful display, et cetera. It was
Yeah,
just
it was
the
specifically
honoring
the-
veterans sign specifically. Yep.
Specifically, so.
Might I ask, was this a significant number increase?
No, just a few, but I wanted just
Oh,
to be recognized since we did receive communications about it.
appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Is there a motion?
Sure. I move to approve the request of the Veterans Advisory Board to place flags and signs on the Rotary from June 25th, 2022 to July 9th, 2022, and October 26th, 2022 through November 12th, 2022.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. All those in favor? It's 5-0, 5 being present. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I'll add one short infomercial. We hope we'll all see you on May 30th. We're going back to a full parade, as you may all know, and we look forward to enjoying that day.
We do
Yes.
as well.
Thank you. And there's something next week as well, right? Isn't there?
Veterans Luncheon, May 5th, next
I don't know
week
if you
at
want
the
to do a
Senior
PSA
Center.
for that as well, or?
Durock?
It's 12 p.m.
Senior Center,
Oh, this coming Thursday?
Yes.
or
Yes.
Next
We
Thursday.
have
Next
Veterans Luncheon at the Senior Center,
May 5th.
Sign up.
May 5th.
part of that procedure is going to be 3 quilts of valor are going to be given to 3 veterans.
Thank you, Andy.
Look forward to seeing you there as well.
Good. Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
time.
Okay. Moving right along. The next is a request to create a gift account for the trustees of Soldiers Memorials. Are you,
Yeah,
I can do it as well
Oh.
as a, it doesn't matter.
you can go ahead because you're at the meeting.
Yeah, I didn't know if we were waiting for anybody. So, this, as the, as folks know, the chair of the board is a member of the trustees of Soldiers Memorial. So, Select Board Member Edinburgh was prior. I stepped into that role recently. And I think while he was under it, there was a vote of the meeting to request a gift account to be established for their use. So the use of the funds would be to install new and maintain current memorials in town. So again, the process of this is described in an email that came from John Gallina, and the request is to be able to expend the funds under the authority of to basically accept the money, but expend the money under the auspices of the trustees of Soldiers Memorial. So that the motion is to establish a gift account for the trustees of Soldiers Memorial to be expended under the direction of the trustees for purpose of installing new and maintaining existing memorials. And it's basically to accept donations from residents and others. So, as a representative, I made the motion.
Yep.
If there's a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, are there any, I didn't ask for questions since I jumped in with a motion, but any questions or comments?
That's a good idea.
Okay, all those in favor? That's 5-0, 5 being present. Moving right along. The next on the agenda is a request from a resident to remove 2 trees abutting 2 Kimball Road.
Good evening.
Evening.
I have composed a document with additional pictures if there's any interest.
Nancy, can you just introduce yourself?
Good
Sorry.
call. And, no, I should be used to this. Andrew Bradley, 2 Kimball Road. A document I've created with additional pictures if anybody would find that helpful, but we can stick to a narrative. For a story that I've called Throwing Shade, the story of 3 trees who grew up on a wetland. The issue began last year, or the story begins last year, when we completed work on an addition to our property. And that addition, during the course of that work, our backyard was devastated by all of the work that came through, the trucks, the building of supplies. As one of the conditions we had with the Conservation Commission, one of the agreements was to make sure we reseeded because our house abuts a wetland. And that wetland, unfortunately, was at risk of runoff from our property if the yard is not well seeded. So work was completed, the lawn was put in, it flourished beautifully for a while and summarily died. And when we brought in some arborists earlier this year to look at the problem, because we're still interested in having a backyard non-mud pit, they assessed the fact that there was a number of trees for whom the overgrowth was causing so much shade that the result was the yard was not able, the grass was not able to take root. Their solution at the time was to remove 2 trees initially. A 3rd tree was added as we brought in more people for quotes, because they identified one tree in particular that was very tall and whatever. So it is 3 trees we're looking at. I don't lightly remove trees. I discovered in a conversation earlier today that I actually have a property on a golf course, or that abuts a golf course. So I'm delighted for that. And I'm not looking to set precedent for running carnage on the tree population. But if this lawn is to take and stick, and if we're not to spend a great deal of money on it every year to try and get it to take and stick, we do need to have access to that reduced shade to enable that. I should also say this request is entirely unrelated to any other business I have with this town, whether voluntarily or otherwise. So this is a standalone request.
So just to give the board some context and process, we had sent to you today an email from Sherry Wittes just explaining that one of the trees is on conservation land, and so is fully under the authority of the Conservation Commission, while these other 2 trees that are before you tonight are on land under the control of the Select Board. And so if you were to approve removal of the trees, the next step would be for that to go to the Conservation Commission. Included in your packet are comments from the Conservation Director, but also the DPW, because we had asked their tree warden to go out and take a look, and they determined that these are healthy trees on town property.
And if I may add one more coda to this conversation, scheduling tree people is notoriously difficult. As it was, we had somebody on the books for about 3 weeks from now, and they called and let us know, hey, we can come do it. I let them know about this conversation. And there is a plan B, because if we don't get this lawn done soon, then we're going to have wasted all the spring, and it won't take during the summer. So plan B is to just clear cut above our property. Just do a straight line. I don't violate anything on the conservation or on town land. And that's where we would be inclined to go if that's what the schedule permitted. If we have to wait until the May 10 conservation meeting, because the tree folks haven't come, or because they haven't come yet, then obviously we'll take the feedback here plus whatever came back from the commission. But if we're able to get these people in and be able to get the yard work done, we do have a ladder back, which is just a clear cut above our property, which is not going to be good for the health of the trees, because so much of the cover for these trees is over our yard. And I'll be back in a couple of years to talk about the trees that are dying in our yard and need to be removed. So that's my concern. So just to give you the full end-to-end picture here, and would love your feedback and thoughts.
Great. Open up to the board for questions or comments.
So I'll start. Thank you for sharing that you have considered trimming the trees, branches that are overhanging your fence line. That was one of my questions. It wasn't clear from the packet. We received 2 photos. In the first photo, there are 3 trees marked, one green, which you've indicated is on your property, you're going to remove it, and 2 red X's over other trees that are in question. In the next picture, there are 4 trees that are marked. So there's 1 green, 2 red, and 1 white.
So this came as the byproduct of the first submission we were doing, and I'll be honest with you, I heard there was 3 trees that are on property and not the 2 and the 1, so I'm not sure which ones fall into which. So I apologize.
That's okay.
Not speaking to that. But the very first submission we did was when we got our first quote, and they identified 2 trees that needed to come down. That's the first picture.
Okay.
With the 2 red X's.
Yep.
The green X's being just small trees in the corner that are on our property that we can get rid of. Mm-hmm. It was after another arborist who showed up as we were collecting quotes pointed out that that 3rd tree has almost no growth on it until all the way at the top of the canopy. And the additional pictures I have, which I can share, Sela has received them, that branch in particular doesn't appear until above our property, very, very high up. And if we do the clear cutting, that's a third tree that we could take down because it's not going to have any canopy, because the only canopy it has exists way, way up in the limbs above our property.
Okay.
So I apologize for the confusion.
No,
It
no,
became
that's okay,
two
just-
separate-
yep.
Yeah, it became two separate submissions.
So appreciate the need to, bring back grass to prevent a runoff. Have you considered sodding in a particular part of the yard?
So it's the entire backyard portion, and the next step we're going to is, and I'm not sure the difference between sodding and the split cutting or whatever they're planning on doing, but it's a not cheap next step to get grass seed in the ground.
Yeah, no, I mean, slice seeding,
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, but
I'm glad you know, I don't.
but no, I mean, like
Yeah.
rolled sod in particular places that are particularly difficult that have not taken. Have you considered it, is really a question.
I've only taken the feedback of the lawn wallows we've spoken to, and that hasn't been an option. Perhaps it's because of the volume of the yard.
Sure.
that
Yeah,
they
it's not
still
inexpensive,
recommend.
yeah.
And I don't know why they wouldn't have recommended that, but
Okay.
the course of action they've gone to was the split seeding. I believe
Slice.
they call it. Slice seeding,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Anything else?
That's all for now.
Okay.
Thanks.
Other comments?
Why don't you go?
So a couple of questions. In my yard, we've failed 2 years in a row to seed areas that are in shade using shade seed. Turns out it's not the shade, it's the nutrient composition of the soil. So I assume the soil's been tested and there's not a nutrient mix you can use so that shade seeds will take.
So much of the soil that was put in was new from when they had to repair after the last work. So, and I don't know how deep it was that they put down the loam and all of those other pieces. So I don't believe that they've actually done any testing per se. But the whole top layer, the whole at least top inch or so, is new loam, was new seeds, new everything. Yes, last year, and it grew beautifully until the spring really kicked in. And this would be, it was growing nicely, June, July, and then summarily took a steep turn after that. So to your question about testing, I don't know that the arborists we've worked with have done that. It may be worth a second shot going for it. I don't know. Again, I'm just taking the words of people who know about lawns and keeping grass alive. It's something I have no expertise on.
Okay. And has there been any discussion since, if it's the thickness of the canopy, of doing selective pruning of the trees as opposed to full removal?
Well, this is what the next option would be, which is just be to take over the stuff.
Not just cut over the property line,
Yeah.
but actually
Yeah.
have an arborist selectively pick branches and
Yeah.
prune the tree not only to thin the canopy, but for overall health of the tree.
So there was a discussion about not removing the trees. I don't know if their feedback was selective pruning. I do know that there's a number of trees that grow over our yard that are not going to be affected by this conversation, that for which there was going to be selective pruning. But I will say that these 3 trees in particular were ones they thought weren't going to benefit from the selective element, that they required that next step. So there is selective pruning involved. I don't know why they chose to focus, and as I say, it was 2 separate tree folks who came by and did this assessment. I don't know why they chose to focus on getting rid of these 3 trees in particular and pruning the others. I defer to their expertise.
Okay, thank you.
All my questions are asked, but I will just make one comment Ellen reminded me of. I'm certainly not a grass expert, nor am I an arborist per se, but my understanding is that a lot of these fertilizers actually, I see you're very close to the stream there. Is that the Assabet River?
Yep.
So a lot of these fertilizers can be actually detrimental to the ecosystem in that type of area. So I would just be cautioned. I would just caution around too much use of fertilizers that close to a stream.
100% with you.
Yeah. So, but all my questions were asked. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just say, there is definitely benefit to, Andrew, to you being able to get grass to grow there, benefit to the whole ecosystem there, and so I think we want to work with you to make that happen. I think you always want to think twice before you cut a healthy tree down as well, and are we setting precedent here? Concerns me a little bit, but yeah, I think we definitely want to try and work with you to, especially since it's 1 or 2 years until you really get the lawn back, and then hopefully you're good going forward, because clearly those trees were there before all this damage happened.
And
You
the
were
prior
able to
lawn
live
was
with
able
them.
to thrive, and it wasn't anything special, but it was able to thrive with the cover that was there. I think the issue, as it's been explained to me, is just getting it to take root.
Okay. Okay. So it sounds like, we don't need to take the trees down. I don't know if, and unfortunately, it's the Conservation Commission and us who are across both these this group of trees. It's not just one organization. But my guess is if we can discuss with somebody about pruning these trees back so you can get your grass in before, the next couple
Sean,
of years without killing these
just
trees.
for purpose of clarification, I think it's really our call. If we were to, if we were to approve, then one of the trees would be fall to the conservation. But the conservation has no jurisdiction, that's my understanding.
Over any of them.
Over any of them, we have all jurisdiction because it's on municipal property. It's only if we say, yes, we would, right,
Right,
correct?
because the third tree is on his property.
Okay, I thought you
Okay.
said, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so just to this is the first clearinghouse, so to
So
speak.
is it a fact of, you either take it down or you don't take it down, or is it something that we would be able to approve, the pruning of these trees?
So the pruning on his side of the fence, he can do.
No, I mean overall, because I think they asked, if I heard John correctly, is there an ability for the town to help support the pruning of these trees, thinning them out a little bit so that he gets more sunlight in there, as opposed to creating a lopsided tree? And certainly taking them down, I would be concerned about that wetland area next to it, right?
So my, I don't want to, Sean, I don't know if Sean was done, but,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
well, my concern with that one is, these are healthy trees.
Yeah.
They're standing there, they're healthy, and while I feel for Mr. Bradley and the fact that this seed is not taken this next time around, although we are in very early spring, I'm not sure, all the remedies have been sort of exhausted. And so, I know that selective pruning, to Alan's point, does amazing things for a yard. I mean, you can take down a handful of branches and it lifts the trees, and it, brings in a ton of sunlight. So, it's not my property, in terms of the overhang. That would be what I would recommend. I don't think that, I'd rather see that happen first before we, take down, or even suggest that we should prune something in effectively what is not conservation land, but unused, kind of undisturbed land. I don't think that that's an expense that the town should take on.
Well, I guess my concern is that, so I think there are limbs probably that we would need to take down to help the Bradleys, rather than them just lopping off everything that is over their property.
Well, the request wasn't for the town to take the trees down.
Right.
It was for you to just give permission. So there was no cost associated with the original.
And my
request.
question is, can we give them permission to prune them, upcut them, as opposed to taking the entire tree down? That's what I'm asking.
Where my thoughts are right now, I'd be interested in knowing that it's a light issue, not a soil issue. You also mentioned that last year the grass grew well through July, which is half the growing season.
Well, it was
And
only
all-
planted in late May.
And so for the first 8 weeks, it was growing well. In August, we were in drought conditions, and there were watering bans in place. And so before we take the trees down,
Yep.
I'd like that to be very clear. That is the action of last resort. So for me, that means knowing that it's not a nutrient issue in the soil, that it's not a water issue, and that if at all possible, rather than taking the trees down, you upprune them to let more light through, but also enhance the health of the tree and let them stay.
Sure, and I think maybe just 2 elements of context. Our lawn was decimated on 2 sides. Both of them were treated exactly the same, with exactly the same stuff, were watered to the best of my ability in the same way with heaps and heaps of water, as my water bill will attest. The area in the shaded area is the only part that died. The rest of it, if you can drive by on Fisher, you can look at it. You know, I don't brag about my lawn. I'm proud that it's survived because, damn it, it's done it on its own. But it is thrived. It is doing just fine. And it is the same lawn, same treatments, same yard, same everything. And the dead part under the trees and the living part outside the trees. And the other concern, by way of precedent, is I share a concern for precedent here. And I love the town and I love you guys, which is why I'm making, going through all the right steps. But I think that there's a danger of the town being involved in having people manage the pruning and the knowledge of their own yard. Much as I love the feedback, thank you, and you guys know a ton more than I do, and I'm going to ask questions, but there's a very slippery slope for this town stepping in and deciding how people should be maintaining their part of the yard, their airspace and stuff. So again, defer to you guys entirely, but I would be worried about other people or you guys having to step in for other people where there's questions as well. And
So, for me, it's not a question of, you're right, you could take a line of sight with, where your property line is and bring a chainsaw right up, if anything hanging over, and that's completely within your right. I think I hear you saying, I want to respect the health of the tree, but you want, a lawn that will grow. I think, Patrick, to your question, if it's really more, you could do that, but does Mr. Bradley need permission to do selective pruning on the other side?
Yes.
Right,
Yes, okay. So I think that was your
That's
question,
my
right?
question.
Right.
Right, it
So-
sounds like, if I understand the situation here, Mr. Bradley, you're willing to pay for the work to be done, whether it's take down the tree all the way or possibly pruning, as opposed to that, as I'll say, a middle ground, so to speak. We keep the tree, we get more sunlight in there, you have a better chance for growing the grass. That's what I'm thinking is. And by the way, I did this a few years ago in my yard. Once my tree got, 2 or 3 trees got upcutted, grass grew like crazy. It was mowing it every other day, it seemed
I'm
like.
heartened by that, thank you. And I'll say, I've talked to 2 different professionals in this, and I'm not representing for the professional merits of this choice. I'm only representing for what I'm told my next steps need to be if I want my yard to come back. So I completely get that other folks know a ton more than I do. And again, standing only on the merits of what was recommended to me by professional arborists.
Yeah, I think I haven't spoken, but sounds like I'm in agreement with some. I feel like we haven't exhausted everything here. I'm very concerned about taking down healthy trees on town property, and it is, the precedent that sets. I go back and forth too, because I understand that if it doesn't grow, you got runoff, we've got the stream there, but you take down a tree that has a root system. And even if I think that, if I saw something from conservation was to leave large stumps, to understand it's still gonna rot over time, and then you're gonna lose that holding of the soil. So, I guess, I don't know the right way to do this, and I think this was a question you had. I am not for giving approval to take down the trees. I would be okay with allowing for pruning of those trees by a arborist that you hire on town property as well as your own. I'd prefer that over upcutting, but I can't require you to do that. You have the right to clear that up, but I guess my personal take would be not to allow for the removal of the tree, to taking those down. They're healthy trees. We're a tree community. We have been for a number of years. It seems like going against what we do, especially as we're right around Arbor Day too.
So I can make a motion.
Came at the wrong time.
That's why I'm here.
Sure.
I'll make a motion to allow the pruning of 3 trees at 2 Kimball Road in concurrence with the Conservation Department review.
So, right, so he has to go to the Conservation Commission.
Right. I'm assuming that's a review. That's what I said, Conservation Commission review.
So I want to amend your motion. I always forget how to do this.
Was I too? Okay.
So I'd like some language in there that, pruning that in a professional arborist view maintains the health of the trees.
Okay. I'll second that amended motion.
Celia, you got that?
Well, so there wasn't a second to the first motion.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so, right, that's
Okay.
why I was like, I never.
So you want me to make one whole motion here?
Well, you have, that's the thing, you accepted what her amendment was, so that would be the motion. I just want to make sure you had that.
Yeah.
And ask for a second.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. So then we have amended motion, whatever, it's different than what's out there. I'm going
Sorry.
to let it back in for discussion about the motion, so
Out of practice.
anybody have
No
questions
questions.
on that? I guess the one question,
Yeah.
so I do have one question. We said to go to conservation. Christie, does conservation, my understanding was I thought that conservation, this may have to go to conservation after we decided anyways.
Right.
So, okay. So we're not requiring
Well,
something that wouldn't happen otherwise by
if
our
we-
motion.
Outright rejected it.
Right.
It would not go to conservation.
Right, but because of our approval to,
Right.
it will go to conservation about our,
But they could reject it themselves as well, correct?
Correct.
right, but what we're going is don't remove them, but we're looking for
And
selective proof.
that, under their policy, they don't remove trees unless they pose a safety threat, they're sick.
Right.
Or they have an invasive, by the Massachusetts Invasive Plant Advisory Group, or they are a stormwater management issue, so.
Okay, I'm fine. The motion.
Did the motion include the address?
It did. It did
Okay,
say
so
to
it's
Kimball
not
Road.
on to Kimball, it's on the town's properties,
Yeah.
Adjacent to.
adjacent.
Okay, adjacent to Kimball Road.
Second.
Can I ask a question? Do we have to, somehow reference the trees as presented to the board in the presentation?
You can say as presented.
Okay.
Second.
Sorry. Lots of discussion about this tonight.
Sorry, I
It's
was,
like making a new motion.
Patrick, you
I've
tried.
only made like 3 motions in a year, so I'm a little rusty here.
It's hard to do motions on the fly.
Yeah.
I see our
They're all good
moderator.
suggestions.
Do you want me to try to put all in one big thing, or do you want?
Yes.
All right. All right, so I move to allow the pruning of 3 trees on the town property as presented, adjacent to 2 Kimball Road, in concurrence with the Conservation Department review. Arborist, and the arborists. I didn't take
Oh, Ellen, did you want to say?
You want to second that?
I'll second it.
So I think it was pruning that, in the opinion of a professional arborist, that will maintain the health of all 3 trees.
Well, I guess I'm looking for the Conservation Department, who also has, who I think has expertise on the tree property, to be part of that conversation.
Yeah, the concurrence is fine, but I'm just saying, selective pruning is a more tedious, more expensive task than just zip.
I agree.
So I want somebody to be on the hook for maintaining the health of that tree.
I mean, just to be clear, though,
In
Mr.
this,
Bradley
in this
does not
action.
have to, he still has the approval
He does.
to
He
a
does.
straight line
Yep.
cut. So
Yep.
that's, I mean, this is our.
And I don't want to, I want to be a frond of the environment.
Yeah.
I'm just
I
saying
don't think
that,
he's, I don't think that there's going to be a intent to give these things a bad haircut. It's next to his property, but, I mean, I'll just,
it's a suggestion. We don't have to amend the motion any further.
I think it's good, and I think Mr. Bradley's heard what. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, 5-0.
Trust.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew.
Cheers.
Okay, next on our agenda is our annual town meeting debrief with the town moderator. Mr. Arnold.
Hello, I'm John Arnold, 251 West Main Street, Town Moderator. We've taken a couple-year reprieve from doing these post-annual town meeting reviews because of COVID and because it was like the middle of the summer by the time we were done with town meeting. But now that we made it through our 14-hour marathon, I thought, and it was more normal than it had been, I thought it was time to just come back and just talk about things. So I've been to the school committee. They hosted me in a similar session. I'm having one-on-ones with the finance committee, and mostly just the chance for us to pause, reflect, see what could be done better, what could be done differently, what went well, so it's like a SWOT exercise. my comments are, and we knew this going in, when the town voted to change the town meeting to start on Saturday at 9 a.m. and do away with the bylaw language about breaks, we ended up not having anybody really having thought through what that meant, and we learned firsthand what that meant. I will commend Christy and the town staff and the school staff. I think having the lunches available worked out extraordinarily well. And then thanks to Shelby, I really do think the dinner break was necessary, even though it was an hour and a half out of the day. I think everybody needed a break by then. So I think we just have to, we don't have to solve any problems tonight, but I just wanted us all to think before, well, if anything needs to change for the fall, that's fine. And also just, I think it would probably be a good idea for us to come to some agreement and expectation with the voters of when we plan on starting, when we plan on stopping, if we're planning on having breaks, and just factoring that in, because it does influence whether the meeting runs till Monday or not. Because this was the first year in 3 years we had a full warrant with lots of items that needed discussion. So just here to get feedback and for us to think about that, and we can certainly talk about it all the way up until next March or whatever. So anyway,
Great.
So I'll leave it to you. I'm here to listen, and I can provide some feedback and points of view if you want.
Great, thank you, John.
You're welcome.
I'll turn it over to the board. Anybody want to make first comments? Shelby?
Sure. First of all, John, I want to commend you for the work that you did. I'm not sure when you took a bathroom break, or I think I
took
saw
two.
you. Okay,
I know you
well.
like me to overshare, but I did sneak out for 2.
Okay. You did a great job. It was a difficult, stressful, long meeting, and you did, I think, an excellent job allowing for lots of discussion and debate, so thank you. So I won't go into a lot of detail of my comments. I'll just sort of bullet point them, and we can, however we want to handle this. So one thought is that roving microphones, I think we learned, are really, really important. I think it saves time to really make sure that we secure typically the scouts to do that, and I think we should make sure that those are in place, and certainly helps those that are less able to get up or don't want to hop over seats, etc. I think we should not allow speakers under voting age to speak. I think we should spend the money without question to make sure that we have electronic voting in place. I certainly understand the circumstances this year, why we didn't, because of timing and all, but I think that that is, I think that that's an important improvement in the process, and that we should have that. One thought I had was that some topics are more, promote more discussion than others. And while I think that there was fairness given to everyone who wanted to speak, I do think that at times, I mean, I felt bad for you because you were not only moderating and managing, but you were managing time. And so perhaps in anticipation for those kind of more juicy discussions, maybe you could have a separate timekeeper. If we want to be really crazy, maybe there's a timer on the screen that like when Mark Stockman is pressing the button, like, here's your 3 minutes, and then it's very clear to everyone where that, how that time goes, or is allowed. Admittedly, so I guess this is a question, if someone is a resident but not a voter, do they have to register in advance?
They have to get permission of the meeting to speak. So
in advance or at that time?
It can be. I prefer that it's in advance,
Yep.
because part of the preamble, as you know, I usually gather
Yep.
up, because if there's business people who want to speak about, for
Yep.
instance, we had a few people with the signs. However, there's nothing in the rules that say it can't be at the very last minute.
Okay.
At that point, it's up to the meeting to decide.
Yep, okay, so that was, I just was kind of confused there. And then my last comment would be that I think sort of as a board, we should contain our, we might provide our comments as a board, whoever is speaking for the whole board, for clarification, or certainly if we're doing a presentation on something that makes sense. But we should really refrain at town meeting from speaking on our individual positions. because I feel like we have lots of opportunity throughout the process leading up to town meeting to kind of express, and we have a microphone in front of us a lot. So my thought is that, just kind of as feedback, is I'm not sure that it's appropriate for, board members to take on those roles. And so I'm not directing that at anyone in particular, but I am thinking through past meetings where we might want to think about how we use that position. So that's more feedback to the board. Obviously, anyone can speak, you're a voter, but that was just more of thought.
Yeah,
So that's all.
Yeah, and I just want to let you know, many of these are not new, and I take them under advisement. I know when I spoke with the school committee as well. I'm going to ask around with other towns. I know, I think I've heard of at least one town that somehow has procured like a green, yellow, red sort of light that might be able to go on the stage in front of the screen.
Yep.
I don't know how much they cost, but I'm going to sort of ask around and see what that's done. Because again, it's hard to stop someone other than to encourage them to do that, but certainly if there was a light, it would be easier for me to point and
Yeah.
say, can you please wrap it up now?
Yep.
So thank you for that. So.
Sure.
Great. Sean?
No, Shelby, thank you very much. Those were excellent. I had a couple of those. But yeah, I would also say that, talking about us individually speaking, I think maybe it would be that if we want to speak on our own behalf or as a citizen, then we sort of fall to the back of the line in terms of all the speakers. And who knows, maybe we walk to the back of the room and get in line behind everybody else. Because if we're going to make a point as a citizen, well, then it ought to have sort of the same kind of weight. And if we just stand up and make our own statement individually, then it is sort of given more weight than if we had just presented it as ourselves. So I appreciate that you said that, and I kind of taken maybe another step, but I also agree with the other things you said.
And I do think it's different, just to be clear, if we're asked to comment as a board, or it's a follow-on, obviously, that,
If we're asked, we should speak.
then we should speak, absolutely, right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then, yeah, I had the same thing on the timing and sort of people kind of sort of abusing the time limit, and it is difficult, John, for you to try and have to police that, because we're not really keeping, explicit track of it, but you can tell when somebody's running long, and then all of a sudden,
Well, I do use a stopwatch on my phone, except
Do
when
you?
I forget.
Okay.
That's what if you see me doing that, I essentially have my phone out, and I just
Gotcha.
start, except occasionally.
He just told you that you've been
in the
talking
heat
too
of the
long right
moment,
now.
I forget.
So I've got like 30 seconds? Okay. Yeah, so I think that was my other comment, but overall, I would say tremendous job, John, and, I appreciate that early on you kind of set the tone for what was acceptable in the meeting, and that allowed it to be the productive meeting it became, and it could have been potentially quite different, and so thank you very much for that.
Yeah, and I do want to point out, I want to thank Christy and the staff as well. It hasn't always been our practice, but I think it worked out very well for for me to get the information and get in touch with the citizens petitions, because there were 4 of them this year. And me knowing right off the bat what those petitions were, I spent a lot of time with the petitioners, making sure that they knew what the expectations were, what could and couldn't happen, so they could have thought through what might happen and how they wanted to respond. So there was a lot of pre-meeting training and discussion, which I think helped us be able to conclude the meeting on Sunday morning, which wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had time for that. So it was very helpful for me to get the names, addresses, and actually schedule lots of either email chats or Zoom calls with the petitioners. That was very helpful, I think, from the meeting, for the voters' point of view, not only for the petitioners themselves. So.
Got it.
Great. So,
Okay.
Alan?
Sure. Well, obviously, a huge thank you. I think with every town meeting, I learn more about the role and the effort and the scope of what you do. And so I appreciate that. And, particularly the extra time and effort with the citizens petitions, which, as I've told a number of people, it takes a certain degree of courage to do a citizens petition. First get the signatures and then stand up in front of town meeting and plead your case and respond. And so the assistance to the, whether I personally agree or disagree with anything, it's irrelevant. The assistance to those people and those individuals to help them through the process and to be able to put their best foot forward, I think serves the town well. I was also noted that this town meeting, there seemed to be maybe a larger than normal contingent of folks who really haven't been to town meeting before. And so I think that's a good thing. And citizen engagement is important. A couple of thoughts on that is knowing that we often expect certain warrant articles to solicit, additional discussion or attract additional attendees. At a couple points in the meeting, there were folks on some of those more contentious, for lack of a better term, warrant articles who were new to the process and weren't as familiar with the procedures. And so I know it takes a little bit of time, but maybe before we head into some of those articles, particularly if it's after a break where fresh faces have entered the meeting, a 2-minute refresher on the structure and flow. For folks who haven't been to town meeting and seen how a legislative body works versus an open meeting or a public hearing, it might be helpful. I'll respectfully disagree with Shelby. I think I'm comfortable having folks not yet of voting age participate in the meeting so long as they go through the process as a non-voter resident to get approval prior to the meeting. I know the town moderator has discretion in that regard or can be brought to the floor.
If the meeting is decided,
The meeting is, I know you present it.
My job is to bring it to the voters.
So you bring it to the voters and we discuss it so there's an opportunity for the voters to decide. We have positions on town boards and committees that are specifically reserved for people under the age of 18 or who are actively involved in our school system, whether they're under 18 or over 18. And in most of our appointed boards and committees, there's actually no requirement that you be 18. So if we want people who are able to participate and who are willing to participate in government and the running of the town to do so, with the understanding that they can't vote, having some participation in the public forum of town meeting, I think is fine. And even though it might add an extra 12, 18, 24 minutes to the event, is worth the time. And I amen on roving microphones and electronic voting. So,
Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, I guess trying not to parrot after everybody, but John, excellent job. Really enjoyed. I thought it was a fantastic example of democracy at work. So I encourage as many people as I can to come out to town meeting and be involved in our town politics and deciding what our community looks like. Just a couple of comments. I'm in between what Alan and Shelby talked about young voters. I think that there needs to be a discussion on that as to whether or not there's a policy involved with, or how that would work. Is there an age limit or whatnot? I certainly want to hear from the younger community, but I also want it to be in a way that is that brings, I'll say, more relevant information to the conversation on the floor. In regards to select board members speaking, I certainly encourage all of my select board members to speak. You didn't give up your freedom of speech, right, when you joined the select board. So I certainly encourage you to speak. I know I spoke at town meeting, and I'll just let the public know that I specifically took time to talk to both our chair as well as the town moderator and let them know that I was going to speak and got their advice on what the proper procedure was for that and tried my best to adhere to their recommendations, and I think I did. So hopefully there isn't any concern about that. And then finally, as far as just suggestions, before the town meeting I had mentioned in regards to the breaks, which I think were handled very well. was the ability to possibly get people back in quicker. I don't think we were able to use them, but there was the possibility of using wristbands. I think later on I even mentioned hand stamps to get people in the door back, into the room as quickly as possible, as opposed to going back through re-registration. So just things to consider as you look at it in the future as to what the options are. So again, thank you very much. I think you did a fantastic job. And I guess one last final thing, at our off-site meeting, I had mentioned to the board and to the town manager, something to consider is fall town meeting seems to be the norm now. It's become more and more the norm. Every year we have fall town meeting. And the question I have is that the right thing? Should we be trying to get back to a single a single annual town meeting and only reserve the fall town meeting for really important, off-cycle decision-making? So just something to consider and think about. I just want to make sure you're aware of those comments as well.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make a few points. First of all, in terms of the wristband ideas, I know Wendy was intrigued by those. Again, we didn't have time to think it all the way through. That's actually the town clerk, so I can work with you and the town clerk, but the town clerk makes the decision about what they feel comfortable in, making sure voters are properly identified. And I just want to emphasize something, if it informs your thoughts about whether it's out-of-towners, young people, or whatever. And I went over this with everyone who presented me with that they wanted to have permission to speak, whether it was the attorneys for the digital billboard people or it was the younger children, is that the town meeting votes whether you may speak. There's no guarantee that you get to speak. It's quite clear that if, for instance, if somebody's in line to speak and somebody moves the question and terminates debate, you don't get special priority in terms of where you are in line. It's when you're there, and so I just want to make it clear that just because someone has been allowed by the meeting to speak doesn't mean they necessarily get to speak. And then in terms of the fall town meeting, my understanding of the history, having been through it all, is that town, as you know from when we took the bylaw and did away with town meeting week, it used to be that town meeting would start Saturday. It would go Monday, it would go Tuesday, sometimes you take Wednesday off, and it would go Thursday, because at times there were, I believe, 60 or 70 articles, and that was the impetus for having what I call the regularly scheduled October fall town meeting, which counts as a special town meeting. It's the selectmen's bailiwick whether you want to call town meetings that way or not. It's a town bylaw that we do have both, but in terms of the warrants and when you want to have them, I'm more than willing to participate in the discussion, but I think some of it is a trade-off of more days or evenings in March versus what are the chances that that there isn't anything pressing, or maybe that there are fewer things pressing in the fall. So it's an interesting ongoing discussion for us all to have.
Absolutely.
Great. I just have one thing, not to belabor whatever. I do think we do, actually I have two things, but they're both related. It's about the length, and I, as folks know here, I was the one that said, let's keep going and get this thing done. I don't want to come back for 2 articles on Monday night. However, I did get people that pushed back and said they wish that we had.
We did vote whether to stop.
We did, which is that's the choice of the meeting. So I think that's fine. But I think it comes back down to breaks, and I think we should think about that. I won't decide it tonight, but whether we, have and formalize with a dinner break in time, whether it's a lunch and dinner break and make each of them shorter, or the third potential option is just, give 15-minute breaks every 3 hours or something like that, so people can get up, move around. I know personally for me, sitting in those chairs up front was tough. I got up, walked around, stood up, which anybody can do, but giving folks a chance to just stretch their legs may be helpful. So that's the only thing I had to think about. I love the fact that we start at 9 o'clock. I love the fact that we can get it done in one day. A number of us make that commitment, and people in town, they know that's town meeting day, and there is the risk it goes to Monday, but if it did what we wanted it to do, I think, by starting at 9, so I truly appreciated that, and want that to continue, but I think just thinking a little bit more about the breaks and how we may be able to
it's more letting people know ahead of time. I think for me, a lot of the the concern was we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And because we hadn't, I went back to the notes from when we passed of all the discussion when we moved to 9 o'clock. there was no comment about what are we going to do about lunch, when we did away with the bylaw with the dinner break. And so I had to essentially say, I'm planning to keep going because I don't get to decide. The meeting gets to decide. But I think the fact that we didn't know what was going to happen was what I think if we had a meeting like in January or February and said we're going to break from like somewhere around noon to 12:30 until somewhere around 1 to 1:30, and then again, depending on where things, I think everybody would have felt better just knowing what to expect. It was the not knowing what to expect that seemed to be unheard of.
Yeah, just for clarification, I still think, and you correct me as moderator, I think it's still going to be the meeting to vote that, but it may be something that we work as a board along with you.
Right, yeah.
And suggest it up front and make that one of those
Yeah.
first votes saying, hey, this is what we're proposing. And
Yeah, I think it's just more people expect it, so, and people can say, no, I don't want to do that, but if, because a lot of people said like, well, I can't possibly stay from 9 until 11 at night with no break. And I said, yeah, I know, but
we
we'll
said,
see
what about standing
happens.
12:30?
Nobody wants to hear, we'll see what happens. They want to know, well, what do you think's going to happen? And right, so if there's a thought through plan and we've publicized it, I think everybody will say like, oh, okay, that either makes sense or it doesn't make sense.
Perfect.
And do you have a second point? I thought you said
No,
two points.
my second point was the point about going late, but I think it's, we did what town meeting should do. They voted not to stop it. And,
Yeah, and I would just add if the catering operation is feasible, then even planning a very short break somewhere around lunch hour to give people the time to go up and grab the to-go sandwiches is feasible. We don't need, 2 long breaks.
Right.
But having that ability for people to stretch their legs, refill their water bottles and grab a.
Yeah, I think those are the things that just, if we've talked about it ahead of time and the planning's in place, it can all work. It's just, we didn't know, it didn't really dawn on any of us, I think, until like 2 weeks ahead of time, and then it was a mad scramble. I don't want to take more time, but I know the town staff had as long a day as we did, so if Christy, Kim, or anyone has any comments that they want to make either now or if they just want to tell me later, it's fine. I don't want to discount the fact that it was a long day for the staff too. So.
I think we have similar comments. I think we really liked, or I've heard good feedback about starting at 9. Something that we haven't talked about, but I think came up at the meeting and came up at a subsequent department head meeting was just ways that we can better help people prepare for a town meeting, communicating out information about different articles, communicating out, sort of how town meeting works. Mark Stockman pointed us to the videos that were on the website, so we watched some of those, but even those are older. And so, there were a lot of good ideas generated. So I think as we lead up to October and the annual town meeting in March, I think we have a lot of thoughts about that.
Yeah.
So.
And especially before next March. Yeah, I just wanted to mention in the middle of the meeting, Maureen Amyot, the library director, sent me an email that I didn't see till the next day because she sent it in the heat of one of the discussions and said maybe the library, could have some sort of mini series of how town accounting works and how the finances work. And I said, well, we should also have one about how town meeting works. And so I'm working. So I'm hoping that I can follow up with her and maybe have sort of like a hosted series, mini series of talks and to essentially give people a chance because as was pointed out, I think some of the experience we had was that there were people who didn't really know what to expect of what town meeting was, and so I had to do a lot of on-the-fly civics lessons that would have been nice to not be on the fly. And I think sometimes and I think some of the frustration that some people expressed as I've gone back and rewatched some of the tape and reflected on it, I think some of it was, people were obviously anxious about the tax rate. People were anxious about that there's this ARPA money and, for reasons that are well understood by some but not by many, it's like we don't know what we can spend it on yet. So I think just the more all of us do to explain, you're going to be asked to do this, we're hoping you don't, and this, again, because I think the more people we find out, the more everyone finds out what the big questions are, the easier it is for everyone to prepare. I know I prepared for a wide gamut of what might happen, but I don't know how to prepare for the specific questions about what about this. That's what all the rest of you do. But I know there was a lot of having to figure out stuff on the fly. I was glad I did the preparation. Which was a lot. And I know you guys were probably also thankful you did the preparation you did. So if anything else comes up, we can certainly have another of these discussions anytime. Maybe have discussion once we see how long the October warrant is, to figure out how to plan that. And certainly, as budget season approaches, I think revisiting some of these things in January, February, not only so we can discuss it, but so the voters are informed of what to expect. I think we can do even better next year. So perfect. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is the Armstrong School roof repair replacement discussion. Amber, you're getting up, so I'm assuming you're kicking it off.
I am. All right, while Sheila is getting me set up here, I'll say good evening, good to see all of you. Amber Bach, 10 Arch Street, in honor of regular town meeting procedure. Just a sec here. These don't sound like they're on. Are they on? Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Not really.
Okay. All right. Hello.
A little louder.
I know, these are quiet. I'm just going to turn them up a little so people can hear. Quiet is not usually a problem for me. All right. Thank you for fitting us onto your agenda. I know you keep a very tight agenda, and I appreciate when we called to ask to be added that you took an opportunity to slot us into the agenda so that we could come and meet with you to discuss a change in the status of our ongoing care of the Armstrong roof and the need to consult with you on best process for how to move forward. I think what makes sense, again, I'm here tonight with Lisa, the chair, and Steve Durrett and Steve Batchelor, so members of our team, and Kelly and Bob, Kelly Giacopello, Bob Ferguson, Dave Gordon, and Adam Sillen, who is from Garland Roofing. And I want to thank Adam for changing his schedule to be here. He's actually slated to be here tonight to help us answer questions, and then we'll attend our school committee meeting tomorrow. So we tried to kind of leave 2 actionable nights to talk with you tonight, and then also be able to continue conversation with him based upon this night's discussion tomorrow. I think what would make sense would be for me to give you a tight synopsis and focus on stepping you through what I presented to school committee, a context of the discussion that they had where they see a different procedure and a concern that they brought forward during that meeting, bringing us here to you. Then we would open it up for Adam to really be able to answer more in-depth questions at an expert level. And then I think to really collaborate with you to discuss next best steps. So I will start by saying that the Armstrong roof is one of 3 roof projects that we have in the capital cycle. We have the high school roof in that cycle, the Hastings roof in that cycle, and the Armstrong roof have all been part of the collaborative process for capital. And we had anticipated being able to wait a little longer on all 3 of those roofs. And they, as you know, in the capital process, were extended further down the capital cycle. And so currently we're here to talk about one of the 3 major sections of the Armstrong roof, which has turned a corner towards a more substantial failure than we're able to repair. We've tried to do some emergency repair, and the context of discussion at school committee was that they have concerns that we can manage even an emergency repair and want to escalate moving forward to replace the whole section. So let me set context. We're going to discuss tonight this major section of roofing, which is the large white section of roofing, which is original to the building. I think that's currently a 96 roof. It's the oldest section in the building, and you can see kind of the areas that are more worn and wet and pool with water. We'll talk more about that when I get into the context. This is the larger section, newer section of the roofing that is in much better condition. This is the barrel roof of the gymnasium, which actually has been called out of concern I think you would hear, and again, for a different night or another conversation, Adam has certainly provided consultation that he thinks that needs to probably be roofed fairly soon as well, most likely with a metal roof, given the construct of that barrel design. And then this being new is in fine shape. So we're just going to focus for the purpose of this emergency context discussion on the white section of roofing. You'll see a couple of their pictures. So that, of the 4 sections of roofing, constitutes a PVC roof. It's 22,000 square feet, 400 square feet of roof section. We reviewed all of our roofing, and we always keep a general updated rough order of magnitude replacement on all of them in the cycle of the capital plan. It was reviewed in 2001, and it was called out for a repair and replacement in 22. And you can see that's actually a quote from Adam, I believe, that the roof is well past its lifetime. It's moving towards 30 years old. The cost estimates were updated in 22 and folded into the capital plan that we brought forward. The whole roof was called out in that rotation of the capital plan for a hoped replacement in FY 21 or 23. We then bumped it to 25 as part of the capital process and actually rotated the Hastings roof in front of it. As you know, we talked at the time at town meeting about the hope to kind of consolidate and focus on the Hastings building and get kind of several major projects done there and kind of bring it back to a place of more continuity of repair, both the HVAC and the roofing. At the time, I would also note to you, both the Hastings and the Armstrong roof are the same roofing material and the same age. So they're both kind of on a parallel trajectory of concern. However, as we talk about the Armstrong roof, something that is different is it suffers more leaks. It actually has a drainage problem related to the way that the actual drains were installed, probably at the original installation and never repaired, so it actually doesn't drain water well. I think that escalates it as it has towards the damage we're facing, but also is why I think the Hastings roof isn't showing the same amount of degrading, and certainly not as quickly, but not far behind. I would leave that to Adam for more in-depth discussion. Again, we kind of passed over all the roofs at that time, and capital through smart conversation on everyone's part, certainly. And I guess I would note before I move into the next series of pictures, you know, if you think about roofing, I think about it almost like maintaining an old car. You know, you can make repairs and keep going. If you have a good repair person, you keep an eye on things, you get up and you manage regular maintenance, and you invest the money necessary in repairs, you can extend the life of a roof. And we have incredibly strong and thoughtful maintenance people who've done an incredible job to maintain all of our roofs. So, you know, in this case, we thought we could continue on that track. So we're going to talk about the escalation of serious concern that brought me to school committee around this 5,000 square feet of roof where we've seen a more kind of catastrophic failure of a tear and is leading to more extensive leaking. And I came to the school committee to discuss an option plan to do an emergency replacement of a seal coat on just this portion of roofing, and then to seek a cycle of a fall town meeting request to do the whole roof of the 22,000 was my initial kind of preliminary approach to the discussion. And I think I'll walk you through kind of their concerns around my proposed approach. And we'll look at this section of roofing, and it illustrates why the school committee felt that with the rest of this roof being of the same construct, that it's too large a risk to do such a expensive emergency repair on just a small section of this roof, when we could have more extensive failures in these other sections potentially as well. So this large section we will look at, and I'll speak specifically about the part where we've seen failure. You can see the type of roof repair that we've done up there. This section was done in 2020 to provide some types of kind of mitigated repair. This is the area where we've seen more extensive tear that we're unable to get a repair to hold. You're looking at a 20-foot section of a tear here that upon repair kind of continues to break down.
Garland has looked at it, and again, Adam can speak to that, sees it as kind of well beyond its life, and that while we've had good maintenance, it's really a structural failure of the material, and it's just breaking down. There was nothing that happened to this section that should have constituted that it suddenly ripped. So that is really characterized the escalation of the concern. That, I do think the cycle of winters we've had are different. It used to be you'd drop 1.5 feet of snow on the top and provide a blanket for most of the winter. And now we're seeing more ice, rain, and kind of changing of conditions. And I think it really was a pretty hard winter on this roof. And you see a detail of a range of kind of the depth and the extensiveness of the tear. You see the pooling of water in these areas, as well as just kind of the general drainage of this roof construct isn't functioning well. And you see the immediate emergency repair that our custodial team makes, and they're very good at it. I want to give a shout out to them. They get up there quickly, and when they saw an increase in water inside, they went up and investigated, took their first stab at a repair, and then followed up with another roofing company who comes in and does some nice work for us, again, on all of our roofs, and did a more substantial repair of that crack. I think to speak to the larger concerns that the school committee posed to me when I made my initial proposal is around the general overall failure of the construct of the total 22,000 square feet. You see here the failings of the flashing, concerns that these kind of tears could just escalate, and the breakdown of these edges and the flashing. You see here this kind of cracking that can lead to what now we're concerned becomes these tear escalations, whereas before we would kind of patch these, but with the breakdown of the material, it just escalates the overall concern, as well as these general kind of what they call pinholes. And I tend to not be a roof expert. I'm like, okay, it's just a pinhole. But as Adam has discussed, like the amount of water that can come in through those very small spaces and basically run along the interior of the building till it can find entry actually can bring in quite a bit of water. So this summarizes some of Adam's kind of work with us, that the waterproofing capacities of the roof itself just don't remain anymore. There's 8 more spots of concern, both with pooling, but also where the patching and the cracks are of concern, and that the current patching we've tried to do on this tear is not holding. Again, I recommended an emergency fix on the 5,000 square feet shown to you, which picked up a number of those cracks and that area of main escalation. And it was basically a poured sealed coat that they basically put on that 5,000 square foot area. To tackle just that small portion is about $50,000 for us to do that emergency repair on that 5,000 foot section. I proposed we do the emergency repair and then come to fall town meeting and seek the estimated $1.1 million to do the whole roof. In looking at that, the conversation, again, I'm overlapping the 2 stages of conversation in a way that I hope you're following. The school committee basically posed to me concerns about my general proposal, which was, one, that the overall state of the 22,400 square feet was of too much concern to them to wait, and that if we see an escalation of such a large section having that level of failure, that the remaining roof remains at risk, and we could be trapped in a cycle of doing more escalated emergency repairs at a level which then become funds that are wasted when we then rip the roof off the following spring and do a full cost repair of the roof. So the direction to me was to escalate process and to seek information regarding what an emergency bid process would look like for us to do a full repair of the 22,000 square foot roof section as soon as possible, and to bring it forward to them with an answer to several questions. We figured it's equally important we answer those questions for you and the school committee in a parallel process. And their questions to me centered on talking with a roofing company to understand, could we get someone to do the repair sometime in the span of this summer so that it would be done for fall? Could we, in this environment, get materials? Could we get people, and could we move forward? And I'm prepared to give you some of the bulleted updates on that, and that will be news for school committee as well, because I've been working on it for the past 2 days. I haven't been working on it. Dave and Kelly and Bob and Adam have been giving me the information to bullet it out for you. The general answers are that they feel we could qualify for an emergency repair through DCAM. Kelly made an initial call to Shad to talk it through with her, our procurement officer, and to indicate that we would be putting in a call. And Adam can speak about the process in terms of the escalation of that emergency process and how you move forward to get 3 quotes and to be able to move forward to get estimates, usually within a 2.5 to 3 week span. And we would then make a request, I guess by process, to open it up for general discussion around how to best move forward to most appropriately seek a special town meeting to approve funds to do a full replacement of that roof. And again, the current estimates articulated in Adam's general assessments that would run between, $900,000 and $1.1 million, with some escalation coverage there. I think things for us to think about before we open discussion are that I ask these questions. If we get a hard number and we get the bid documents and we get an approval and we get funding, what if we can't get certain materials and we get delayed? Can you put a roof on with kids in the building? The answer is yes, we can. It would still allow us to move forward as soon as we would have the acquiring of materials and people to do the installation. Our preferred process would be, again, moving as quickly as possible, that we would have the opportunity to get that work done in the summer, but you certainly know what process is looking like in construction. Either way, getting a bid, getting a quote, and getting in the queue for materials and process would allow us to secure cost at the most advantageous, and then we would install the roof when all of those came into alignment to allow us to do so. Those are the quick bulleted answers that I've received in the last couple of days from the team behind me, who are really the experts on this. I'm just the summary. And we know it was important to come to you right away to collaborate on process, open up discussion, and to understand the best way to move forward. So there you go.
Great. I see Steve raised his hand. Steve, you want to?
You might realize that this request tonight is very unusual for the school committee and the school administration to come forward to the Board of Selectmen. And you might understand that this discussion has to do with the timing of this particular project. The basis behind this, and you may have seen my comments when I was speaking at the school committee, is simply that inflation right now is killing us. In between January 1st and now, this particular segment of the construction economy has increased by 10%. So if we went through the normal process that in fact you would expect us to do, therefore, as suggested, we do the $50,000 repair, we get that, we come back to town meeting for money, then we put together a bid process and we go out to bid. We probably wouldn't fix this roof until perhaps March, April, June of next year. That's a whole year's worth of inflation. It might be 30%. And in my opinion, we all, that is the school committee and the Board of Selectmen, have to understand that if we wait in time and that inflation happens, we're going to increase the cost, not only the $50,000, but another $300,000 on top of the $1 million that we're talking about here. And my feeling was, we know the roof is bad, we know that it's dead, and we know that we should fix it. So the real decision is, what other options do we have in terms of how we might do this in terms of schedule, Can we do it? Amber answered the question. If we are diligent, we can get it done in the process and get it done in a shorter period of time than the cycle that we would normally do. And the second question is, which I think is on everybody's mind, what is the impact on the tax rate? Well, my discussion is this is certainly one of those ideas where we might get 30% return on our investment if we used free cash, which therefore would not impact the taxpayer. And it certainly is not something that's a normal maintenance process, because this roof should last for at least 20 years, perhaps 25, maybe even 30. But the issue here isn't really what you heard in terms of the mechanics and the necessity to fix it. It is a necessity to fix it. And obviously, as you saw those cracks, we're getting water inside the roof, inside the insulation, which means the heating of the building is already being affected. But more importantly, do we really want to wait and suffer the inflation that we know is happening this year in order to act? And that's the reason why, in my opinion, we brought it here before the Board of Selectmen, so we're all players in this decision. Secondly, the issue of the need for this is clear. It's not a question, should we do it? The question is, how quickly can we do this, and what would be our ability to execute and save the money that we know inflation is killing us? And so that's the real reason. It's a decision that's for the whole town. And ultimately, it's also a decision that we both bear if we don't do it, and kids end up with water on their heads in that school. Simply, that's the reason why we're here, is because that was my point. We can't wait, and we shouldn't spend more money when we could take care of it now. It's your decision. Otherwise, we go through the process that Amber had outlined, and that's a logical way we would have done it if it really wasn't in the condition that it's in. So, thanks.
Great, thanks. I'm going to jump in here and then have other board members, but I've thought about this. But I think I'm not going to debate the need for this, the need to do it quickly. You guys are the experts. I'm not an expert on roofing. We just talked about trees. We're not expert on pruning trees either. But to me, the evidence is there. We need to do this. We need to move forward. And it's going to cost money. I think there's strategies to figure that out. I guess my concern, of course, is about what we heard at town meeting, and I think probably every single one of us continues to hear, is my tax bill. And we know the numbers are going up. We've talked about that. So I think, to me, it's about, I'm supportive of moving forward and moving forward quickly. It sounds like that's an option for us to do. I think the discussion we need to have is how we go about paying for it. And I think Steve suggested an option. I guess I'd throw out, a couple other things. We just went through some approvals. Is there things we can delay? For example, we voted this town meeting, high school rooftop chillers is something we've talked about. Is it imperative that we get it done this year, or can we move some things around potentially on that? Because really what we're doing is, it's on the plan, as Amber said. That's why we have plans, but things happen that we have to fix. So it's, I think, moving it forward. Sounds to me that it's essential. I'm going to trust that you all and the experts here know what they're doing. I mean, I think us debating what we can do, or, hey, can you patch that? That's to me personally is just kind of a waste of our time. I think I'm going to trust what you're saying. To me, it's about figuring out how we pay for it. I think Christy and I had a quick conversation, more about what we could do, and I think it was the request that came in about calling a special town meeting. We absolutely can do that. I think if we were to do that, we'd want to have bid in hand and know the exact numbers. We don't want to go in and then have to go ask for more money. We would want that in place. But I think, Chris, you could probably talk about it, but I think it's really, we can turn that around in a couple of weeks in terms of a special town meeting. And I think, I'd be supportive of that, but I do think we should, personally for me, I think we should be talking about, how we pay for it, impacted taxes or no impacted taxes. Are there trade-offs with other things or delays? But, to me, it's imperative that we move forward. Steve said it correctly. I mean, this is, teachers, so our employees, our children, and I do thank the school committee for saying, hey, patching it is kind of, you're throwing, money away, kind of. It's going to be torn up soon enough, so. My 2 cents, but I'll turn it over to the rest of the board, too. I'm sorry for jumping in right away. Anybody want to? Okay.
So, a couple of comments. I agree the replacement needs to happen sooner rather than later. I actually, this afternoon, when I should have been working my day job, I went back and viewed the discussion video from the school committee meeting. And one of the aspects I'm not sure was on the slide is that this $50,000 repair is only guaranteed for 1 year. And given that there's a large section of roof of similar age, if we went that route, we would be running the risk that in February, a different section of roof has the same level of failure and water gets in the building. And the discussion about that wasn't just about the water damage, it's about the potential for mold and other strategic problems that become significantly more expensive to fix. I can't speak to whether inflation in construction over the next year will be 2% or 30% or what it is, but certainly we know that a bid in hand today is a guarantee of what it's going to cost. And looking at the timeline from what Amber said, if it's 3 weeks to get bid and possible funding from the state and commitments there, we have a meeting in 4 weeks, I believe, if I looked at the calendar correctly, 14-day notice. So we'd be roughly 6 or 7 weeks away from a special town meeting, which would hopefully be soon enough to get commitments to get the work done. As far as how it gets paid for, I think that'd be a great discussion. We have a finance team of department heads and things, and maybe come back to the select board.
We're meeting Tuesday, as we said, so
Tuesday,
it's a good chance for
in a recommendation. I guess my hesitancy would be to, and I know it's tempting to do, but I'd be very hesitant to delay other capital projects. And we're, how did we get here now, right? We've known that these roofs for Hastings and Armstrong were at risk. Using the best information that people had available at the time, orders was switched, and then timing was delayed, even though we did know that each time you delay, there's a risk of failure. And knowing that, for example, the rooftop chillers in the school are also past their useful life and facing maintenance issues, as tempting as it is to eventually, if we keep kicking cans down the road, we'll have more of these emergency situations where major repairs need to be done out of the planning cycle, and really throw a wrench in the works into taxpayer expectations. And so I would just, as the finance team meets and looks at options, I would just encourage looking at the funding mechanism, and hopefully sooner rather than later, we know how much the state will kick in for the emergency repair, or how much that would be through their emergency maintenance program. But do it in a way that doesn't put other projects and other capital projects at risk of failure before we have a chance to get to them.
So I may miss that. So is there,
So the DCAM process just lets us escalate
bid
the
quicker.
approval process. It doesn't give us money. It just lets us escalate the.
I was hoping, I was putting it out there.
It streamlines aspects of your application process and helps you move more quickly. I certainly recognize, I think the finance meeting is a good one for us to continue the discussion. I'm also cognizant and appreciate the discussion of us needing to stage things out, and I think that's what we've been trying to do, and I have certainly articulated to Christy and Kim my respect for the vision of the capital process and the good work that it's doing for us to get a handle on staging our projects out. I think, we face, you face kind of three buildings that have a similar cycle of age. So you've got the high school and Hastings and Armstrong, which have kind of an end-of-life cycle kind of all stacking up. And we deferred much of that work as we dealt with the enrollment issues that we had to focus on adding space. Like, we've continued to make good decisions as a shared team and as a community, and faced responsibilities of the growth we were facing 8 years ago, really strategically and responded really thoughtfully. And now we're looking at having kind of deferred some of those larger pieces, and they will stack up. I mean, the chiller system cools the whole building of the high school. That is our 7-day-a-week large facility that is used year-round for all rec and after-school and sports and everything. So, you know, again, we don't want to back ourselves into another failure, but I certainly respect that subcommittee is a good place to talk about relative risks and to make plans.
And can I ask one,
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
It's good. So the number, and maybe this comes after, but just so I don't forget, but the 1.1 million rough, I know it's a rough estimate. I think if I'm looking at the capital plan, that what we had planned out there was north of 2 million, and maybe that was inflation, other stuff, but is 1.1 million
So that
roughly the number we're,
right? The other estimate was for the whole roof to do everything.
which would include the gymnasium?
Yeah. So we bundled I mean, whenever they give you roofing information, they break it down in sections, and then they also give you the whole. And when we rotated them into the capital, we did the whole Armstrong. Just the Hastings comes as a whole package because basically everything except for one section of that building is all the same roofing construct that you have on the top of Armstrong, with better drainage, but still same issue and same age.
Okay. So I just, further question then, so that would mean that if we do move this up, and I think you talked about it, the metal roof on the, what do you call it, bubble roof or whatever in the gym, would still leave 1.1, 1.2 million out there for.
Right, you would still need to look at this roof section next, and again, you can certainly ask Adam the depth of questions you have about the life expectancy remaining on this section of roofing. I'd have to look back at the notes that he provided, but this was the section he called out for full, he had it right, good job, Adam. He asked us to replace this in FY '22. We just thought we could go further, so.
Well, we can, we're on FY '23.
Yeah. He was close. Yeah.
Ian? Yeah, so just to build off of that question, I'm wondering, I would be interested to understand what the, where we're at with the barrel roofing, because it sounds like that's the next most critical piece, and it sounds like the remaining fourth section there has a little more stronger legs.
I'm so excited to sit down and listen.
So, in regards to the barrel roofing,
Could you just
Okay,
introduce?
just introduce yourself just for the
oh,
public.
sorry,
Yeah.
I'm Adam Silent with the Garland Company. I'm also a resident of Westborough. The barrel roofing was put on in 2001, so it's roughly 21 years old. Any single ply roofing, when we're talking about single ply roofing, it's they break it down into 3 sections: PVC roofing, which is essentially plastic, TPO, which is again essentially plastic, and EPDM, which is rubber. That's what the black roof is right there. They all roughly last, it's a range. It depends on drainage, how much mechanical equipment is on roofs, installation. It's a wide range from 15 to 20 years. So that roof on a barrel roof, and again, I don't recommend putting it on there. With our extreme conditions, rubber, it's like an elastic band. It expands and contracts without weather.
Mhm.
Well, after 21 years of being on that and trying to hold itself onto that structure, that really rubber, it can form to it, but it's not meant to be on a structure like that. What's happening is it's pulling away from itself. It's like a rubber band. When you take a rubber band and you go like this 45,000 times, eventually it doesn't go back, and that's what's happening on the barrel roof right now. Fortunately, when they installed it correctly, where they had large sheets that almost went from edge to edge. So what's happening is your seams are lifting, and we just have, it's a concern, but it's a much less concern than some of the other roofs that you have in town. We can do stuff to patch that, limp you through. As far as money goes, I think that's a 4,000 square foot roof, roughly, something like that. And I think I had thought maybe it's, $300,000 or something to replace that, but it's hard to budget things right now. Going back to what Steve had said, from December 31st, 2001, as soon as the year flipped to 2022, everything went up 25% in the roofing industry. And it goes up essentially 7% monthly as we go forward. When you buy insulation, which used to be, you didn't think twice about it, they don't give you a price until you actually ship it now, because they're just telling you what you're paying for it, and everyone needs it, and you get what you get. So waiting right now and budgeting is tough, because one day you could be at $1 million, you wait 4 months, you could be at 1.3. It's very hard to gauge right now, and it's all of construction, unfortunately.
To follow on Shelby's question, though, so what I'm understanding is, I think the recommendation is, when we replace that, is to put a metal roof on there.
Correct.
Which makes sense, I
You
think.
would want to put a full metal panel that goes from eave to eave, and they can curve them, that goes all the way over the roof, so there's no penetrations in that roof, and there's basically no way it can leak.
Yeah. But so that's going to be different, sorry. That's completely different than PVC or whatever we're going to be putting on this other roof. I
Correct.
guess the question that would be is, and maybe you were going there, Shelby, is there financial benefit for doing it all at once, or does it not really matter because they're two different materials?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not necessarily. I mean, it's not a terrible idea, but you're not guaranteed. Some contractors are very good at flat roofs. Some are very good at metal roofs. Some are good at both. But based on the bids that are going to come in, you're not sure who's going to be lowest and most financially secure for the town. And contractors are funny. They're gonna treat that as a separate setup point. So they almost treat it as a separate job.
Sure. Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter.
Okay, thank you. That was my question, thank you.
Patrick, you did a question.
Sure. So first of all, thank you, Amber and team, for bringing this forward to us. I think this is really important, and I'm certainly supportive of fixing this problem. Just on your comment on the metal barrel roof, standing seam is, I would imagine?
Correct, yep.
So having roofed many houses and gutted many houses in my lifetime, I've seen the damage that can be caused by water. So my question, I think, is to, I don't know if it's Amber or someone else, but has there been an assessment of any internal damage on the building? Mold growth, electrical damage, structural damage as a result of this? Because this is ongoing.
Right.
Hey, Patrick, thank you for the question. Bob Ferguson, Director of Buildings and Grounds. We have had mold testing done within the Armstrong building, and it came back clear.
Okay.
So there's no concern there. As far as we understand it, we've made great efforts to try and, stop the water from seeping in during these roof episodes. We've had pretty good luck thus far. And thankfully, we've stopped the water from coming in as best we can, and now it's time to replace it. If you want to put a happy face on a sad story, you might want to think of it a little differently. These roofs, as Adam has mentioned before, only last 15 to 20 years. This particular roof, the PVC section, was only supposed to last 15 years, so we've got an extra 15 years into it, so you can take that to the bank as a savings.
Yeah, you get to the point where it's like the little Dutch boy, how many fingers can you put to plug these holes, right?
Other
So,
than that, I think we're in good shape, but this is the time to take care of it.
yeah, I appreciate that.
Economics, simply economics.
Sure. My next question is about, you had mentioned, Amber, that Hastings is similar age roof, similar technology. Sounds like there's some similar problems going on there. The barrel roof seems like it might be secondary at Armstrong. Is it third priority to what's going on at Hastings as well? And I'll add to that question by saying, if so, is there an advantage to repairing them both at the same time? To the earlier comment about inflation, the rising costs, and the nature of the
I
age.
appreciate your question. I mean, you're looking, again, I'm not expert on it, I would have Adam come back, but you're looking at an emergency procurement here based upon a failure, and that's a different process, and one in which it is an escalation and an emergency that's very different than Hastings. We have Hastings in the queue to come forward for discussion. Hopefully there maybe be some, advantageous breaks in construction costs by the time we do that one. And I certainly think that the maintenance and repair of the Hastings roof has followed the track of hopefully getting more time out of it that we had hoped in both of these roofs. And I don't think it's, you can speak to the amount of.
Yeah, so what happened at Armstrong is what we call a blow-off. It didn't actually blow off, but your membrane was so brittle that it probably was a wind event that happens at the perimeters. Your perimeters are where your highest wind pressures are. That's where you're supposed to, the roof's supposed to be most secure. And it happened twice, once in 2020 in that one section Amber had showed in the slides, and then the second time, a month or so ago. So when a blow-off occurs, that's considered a catastrophic failure. And what's going on at Armstrong is, I think it's because the way the roof was originally installed, the drains were installed higher than the actual roof, so the water can't actually all get to the drain, the actual drain. It just sits there.
Will the $1.1 million address that?
Yes, of course, yeah.
Yeah, that was,
So
thank you.
what they did was, because of that, any standing water on any roof system, I don't care which one you put down, is going to degrade it over time. What happens is that it starts to break down the
Sure.
especially on PVC, the plasticizers is what holds the waterproofing capabilities together. Well, once you put that down, you're in a race of time, okay? So the sun baking on it is going to bake those plasticizers out, and as they come out, the roof gets more and more brittle. Well, water accelerates that process. So what happened on this roof is, since you have so much standing water, you had a wind event and it's ripping the roof apart. On Hastings, you have good drainage there. When Amber had showed the slides with the perimeter edge flashing, they had little cracks. That's your problems on Hastings, and it's something that the facility team has been doing a great job doing maintenance on. You do get calls maybe every month, every other month about, hey, we got a leak here, and that's 95% of the times that's where the leaks are. You don't have anything that's happening. You have some tearing happening in the middle of the sheets, which is normal, but not like this.
Mhm.
So Hastings, you have a little bit of time. I wouldn't say you have years, but you have time.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you, Ian.
Yep. Other questions, or?
Yeah, I would just say, nobody likes to come back after town meeting and ask for more money, right? We know that, there was no plot here. It's unfortunate it happens, and it's a tough discussion that needs to happen. I understand what Ian's saying about, can we move other projects around? Unfortunately, that a plan is just an estimate. It's things happen, and the plan sometimes has to change. I think it would be excellent if we did have a rock-solid bid before we went back to anybody and asked for more money. But as to trying to move other projects around, I'm not really certain about that either. I think you look at the chillers, and also the AC project, which was put off, I think, previous times because it was short on funds. It's difficult to push that project off as well. This is just a difficult discussion that has to be had, I think. I look forward to, reviewing the school committee meeting and following the next school committee meeting is to hear further discussion on it.
So I would throw it.
Can
Go ahead.
Just a couple comments. So fully supportive of, I think the emergency repair of the 5,000 square feet or whatever it was makes no sense. I think repairing all the white section makes the most sense, and doing that quickly. I think it's important around the financial discussion.
make sure you're talking.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think it's important around the financial discussion that we look at the other projects, and that's part of the capital planning process, the other projects that are part of the school process, and really thinking about, can any of those, to reassess those, and can those be pushed out? And I would encourage that conversation to take place. I'm not going to reference any specific, that's for the capital planning process and for the schools to work through, because we do have a limited amount of money, and it has to be spread across, all of our town assets. I will point out that in the capital project section of our whatever, in the capital project request information, that it says that it's a 30-year, and we're not there yet on this roof. So I don't know what that 30-year is referencing, but we're not, if it was installed in 96, we're not there yet.
I'm not sure what.
So I don't know where that information came from.
Yeah,
I just,
those roofs don't last. They will give a 30-year warranty now, but it's not that, it's that style roof, but a thicker style roof. I can tell you they're not gonna last 30 years.
Okay.
The 30 years that you might be referencing is the roof that I'm proposing. It's actually an actual multi-ply 30-year roof. I'm not sure.
okay,
I'm sorry.
okay, no, maybe that's the reference to the
Yeah,
30 years
yeah,
as opposed
so-
to what's on there now. Thank you.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So that's, I think it's important, as we understand that. And then I know what hasn't been discussed, or unless I missed it, is, would the use of ARPA funds be appropriate for this project? So when we think about impact.
So I can, if I butt
Yep.
in real quick, I can tell you, because we're a national company, we've used up ARPA funds across the whole
Mhm.
entire country. So roofs do qualify because they do, it falls into the indoor air quality betterment
Yep.
and insulation.
Yep.
So yes, they have qualified across the rest of the country.
Sure. So when we think about impact to the taxpayer, I mean, that's another, Mr. Durrett made the point about free cash, but I think we need to keep, so as the finance team comes together and has those conversations, I know there's a lot of folks and departments interested in that money, but this is clearly emergent as well, so.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back, I agree with you, an ARPA fund is there. I think, though, from town meeting, as we spoke to a lot of the projects that were voted on town meeting, we said there's a potential for ARPA as well, so it's kind of, but I think, take it away. So I think if I can, from a time perspective, I don't think we need a formal vote. I think this, what I get is the sense of the board here is to basically say move forward with your process, so we're supportive of it. I'm hearing that we need to move forward with the whole thing. So take that process, expedite it as we can through DCAM, as you talked about, get bids in hand, bring it to us, and I'm looking at Christie here to make sure she keeps me in line, but that we would support moving it to calling a special town meeting for moving this quickly to see that we can get it hopefully done this summer or as soon as we can. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a side note too, and I don't know when special town meeting happens.
Well, we would call it, so we have, basically, once we get the numbers, we can call it
Okay,
within 2
all right.
weeks. So it'd be a special.
Okay, gotcha.
special.
Because I
Real
heard,
special.
I heard 7 weeks earlier. It's imperative we're going to try to do it as soon as possible. It's material shortage right now in construction, going from plywood to in the roofing industry. It's insulation right now. It's hard to get insulation that we're putting down on the roof. So the quicker that we can get this going, because those lead times, when they used to be a week, are now 2 months. So if we're going to try to line it up with the summer, it's kind of been a race. Even if it starts in the summer, that's okay, and it goes into the fall. We do roofs all the time with kids in school, especially during emergency situations, but time is a little of the essence. And like I said, escalation, we don't want to pay any more than we have to. They are going up, 7% monthly, so.
Yeah, and I think from our side, we're supportive. We can, we'll keep, with Amber and Christie, I know, meet regularly and talk. I mean, we can move things through as quickly as we can. I'm hearing support from the board to do that. I think the one thing, as we know, is the worst thing we could do is go with an estimate of a bid and then have to go call another one or go back in the fall and say, hey, we need to get additional money. So I think getting those bids out, pulling us together, we'll do it as quickly as we can. If we even have to call a special board meeting because there's a gap there, absolutely we can do that. I think it's important that we work together and move this as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so that's my job. I will get you guys the scope of work, specifications, plans, all that stuff, and then get.
So now it's on you.
Yeah. Get close to that, man. It usually
Also,
is,
you're
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I want to mention there's only so many qualified contractors out there. So
Yeah.
the time when, state awarded
Yeah.
contractors, especially in the DCAM,
Yeah.
they're going to be booking up. That's my
Exactly.
major concern.
Yeah, so I actually talked to one of the biggest contractors, not only in Massachusetts, but on the East Coast. They're located in Worcester. And they told me today that they're completely booked for the summer already, so again, time is
Yep.
of the essence.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Perfect. Sorry, Steve, you have a,
Yeah, just to, I guess to close the discussion, perhaps close the discussion, but this discussion actually got us to where I was hoping we could be, because we can't move forward on this process until there was acceptance, if you will, by the Board of Selectmen of the timing, and obviously the need for a special town meeting to do it. As you know, under state bid law, we probably only can delay a bid to a decision maybe 30 days, and with a request to the contractor, maybe a little longer. And so the timing of this is on our side now with your discussion and saying, yes, you would support it, yes, you would call a special town meeting. Now we go and start the process to get it done as quickly as possible to be able to achieve your goal, which is to call the special town meeting as soon as possible. So now it's in our court, and this accomplished exactly what I was hoping for in regards to bringing it before the Board of Selectmen and not just slumping and kicking the can down the road. So thank you.
Yep. Well, thank you. Thanks for bringing it forward, and this is what we're here to do, work together on behalf of the town, so thank you.
Thank you very much, you guys. I'll stay close with Christie on this, and Adam has already started working on documents, so.
Perfect. And
Thank
we'll
you.
have the discussion on Tuesday at Finance
Yeah,
team as
definitely.
well, and be back to both boards on that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Move us forward to item 8, which is approval of Community Development Department fees. This is something we've had before us before. I'll turn it over to Christie.
Yep, so in the first meeting in March, Fred Leonardo, Community Development Director, came before you with
Oh, Fred. Sorry to introduce you.
with fees, with proposed fee adjustments. As a reminder, that was a goal of the board. You'd asked me a couple years ago, right before the pandemic, to start to review fees. And that the pandemic sort of derailed that, so it was a goal again from this board, and so we've started to do that. So Fred had provided you with suggested fees. In this packet, he gave you 2 additional fees for your consideration, and those were an administration fee of $100 where someone applies for a permit and they review it, but then they decide they don't actually want the permit. And so that's to recoup the money for permit review. As a reminder, as we talked about last time, a fee is supposed to pay for the cost of whatever service is being provided. And then a $25 fee for people who refuse to submit electronically. So as you know, we have Permit Pro. We try very hard to get people to use it. But unfortunately, Fred's staff does spend time entering applications for people who are not using it. So a $25 fee for those folks who are not submitting electronically. So I think your only action tonight would be to follow up with Fred. I know that at the last meeting, when Fred was here, I was asked to send the Excel file, which I did. So if there's any additional questions, and then we would hope for approval.
Great. I will open up to the board for actually, Fred, anything you want to say beyond that, or you're just here for questions?
No, Fred Leonardo, Community Development Director, Christie took care of it all.
Perfect. So I'll open up to the board.
Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah, thanks so much for being here, Fred.
Sure.
Can you just explain a little bit more about the admin fee? Because it intuitively makes sense to me, but I'm not sure I understand when it would be applied.
So generally it'd be applied if somebody doesn't move forward with the permit. So occasionally, and not very frequently, people ask for a refund on the permit. So if we've already gone through the process of reviewing it and approving it,
Okay.
and then they rescind the request to do the permit, we're out the time to do all that.
Yep.
So it wouldn't apply very often as a discretionary fee, and we'd only use it in the case where we've gone through the effort of doing everything.
Yep. Okay.
And this would just, if I understood that correctly,
Sure.
sorry to jump in, they pay the fee up front, they ask for the refund, you just refund it minus $100?
Correct. And occasionally, we don't actually get the fee until, we will not issue a permit, nor does the system let us, because we don't want to, issue the permit until the fee has been paid. But on occasion, they delay the payment. So we'll oftentimes start and do the review before we've even gotten the payment. So in that case, again, we'd want the ability to be able to charge if we've gone through the effort of spending all staff's time to do the review.
Yeah.
So if we issue a permit, no, this administrative fee wouldn't be applied.
Right, understood. I think just for the board's discussion, and Fred certainly encourage you to weigh in here, I'm still struggling a little bit with keeping our, I'm not opposed to any of the proposed increases, but keeping the residential and commercial rates on par with each other, with the exception of the remodel. I know that's $1 different per thousand. So, oh yeah, thanks. So I'm still struggling with that they are, feel like there should be a higher commercial burden. And I guess I had one question I had, and you may have said this, Fred, I didn't go back to our notes from last meeting. Why are the, you're proposing 125 and 150 for the electrical permits, right? Because they were sort of a weird number. It was like 128.35, like it wasn't like a round number in the spreadsheet, unless I read that
Well,
wrong.
electrical has, there's actually 4 different, it depends on whether you're talking commercial, residential, and how it breaks down.
So those are flat rate. In the spreadsheet, there was a number like maybe those were just the mean. Forget the question. Never mind. I read the spreadsheet wrong. Forget it. Never mind. Sorry.
You're okay?
I'm fine. I'm fine. My other question was, is there a standing definition of minor repairs? Because there's a fee for that.
Yeah, minor repairs are generally siding, roofing,
okay.
windows.
Okay.
So yes, they're very specific. So there's not much of a plan review. The application is much more shortened.
Okay.
So they're
So that's understood when someone's coming in to get a permit, that would be sort of their classification that they're falling into as minor repairs.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we actually have a definition that if you go on Permit Pro now, we refined it, so there's a little red letter that says what are minor repairs, and that goes to insulation too, I believe, is in that. So roofs.
Yep.
Again, those items.
Popular discussion tonight. Okay.
Sean, anything?
Just a quick question. The ZBA permits, are we covering those tonight?
Yeah, it's part of the package. Yeah.
Okay, so zoning doesn't do those themselves. All right. So those are all quadrupling. That's based on sort of ZBA's recommendation, or?
It's based on we did the same outreach as far as what comparable to data dashboard communities were.
And I think
Okay,
we
and that's
talked
what we're
last time
saying,
about
okay.
the administrative costs of that particular process being so hefty. So that was driving a lot of that.
Yeah, staff, we recoup on the mailing, but beyond that, the town advertises for the ZBA, the mailings themselves, staff puts those out. So the $50 really doesn't cover anything, to be honest.
Right, the minutes, the administrative,
Right.
like all of that goes into it.
Oh, if that's in line, I'm comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was it for me.
Patrick?
Sure. Thank you, Fred, for bringing this back to us. I know last time we had talked, I had a couple of questions for you, so I'll just follow up with those. I guess, and I don't know if this is better for you or for Christy, but beyond a previous board asking for the assessment of the fees, is there any other reasoning for the increases in the fees?
Well, just to keep pace with our, what we should be charging.
But also, as Fred said, it's staff time. And
Right.
so as staff salaries increase, the fee, or the recouping that is intended with the fee would increase.
So that brings me, I guess, my next question. Is there any anticipated forecast on the revenue anticipation for these fees increasing?
For the increased fees?
Right, year over year.
I mean, year over year, we always estimate revenue for permits, so.
I just don't know if we're talking thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional
Well,
fees.
we
yeah.
don't review fee adjustments based on like a goal for revenue. We review it based on recouping costs and how we measure against our neighboring communities.
Do
So-
these fees go directly towards this department?
No, they go in the general fund.
Yeah, they go in the, right, they go in the general fund. So to answer your question, and hopefully I'm answering it, based on previous years, if we were just to increase it, and I can't assume that we're always gonna have the same permit applications and fees, but it was about 150,000 that we may be able to additionally generate.
Okay.
If that answers that question.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you.
that helps.
Those are real rough numbers, though.
Yeah,
It just gets me in the
That gives
ballpark.
a ballpark of.
Yeah. And then in regards to kind of, so the process here, just educate me a little bit. You went out, you looked at all those different towns in your list, and you found what they were charging for the fees
Correct.
in their town, and we said, hey, here's the assessment, here's where we think we should increase the fees. I think I asked this question last time you came before the board. Is there a deficit that we're trying to fill here? Is there, the justification for just increasing fees because other towns have slightly higher fees than us, doesn't seem,
That's not the justification.
okay, so what is the justification?
The justification is that the cost to issue these permits has increased, and a fee is to recoup the cost. And obviously, we're not fully recouping the cost based on what individuals who are doing this work are being paid. So, but because there's a balance between recouping the cost and staying in line with our neighboring communities. And with our data dashboard communities, which we all decided with the school department what those data dashboard communities were appropriately be.
Sure, no,
So,
no,
so there's no specific deficit. I think when you increase revenues in the general fund, you decrease the amount of money that needs to be levied on the taxes. So as we're looking at these large tax bills, this is an opportunity to reduce the burden on the taxpayer.
understood to a certain degree, but it also is an increase on burden for those taxpayers that want to leverage these services. So the question then comes up, I want to incentivize people to improve their homes. I want to incentivize businesses to improve their businesses to bring more value, and that's where the town actually recoups the dollars, because their appraisals then go up because their homes are more, worth more, and their businesses are worth more. This is a little bit, I'm not going to call it double dipping, but it's kind of in that vein of we're charging them on the upfront on paying for the services to improve their properties. And that's where we're getting the recoup on the money is on the valuation of the properties. So, I mean, $150,000 of the total town budget is a small slice of the pie, but nonetheless, the town is just taking on $1,100 on the average taxpayer. So that's why I'm very sensitive. And I'm not sure a dollar increase on a residential new, construction or even on a remodel is, I guess I don't buy that, for lack of a better term, so.
So $150,000, by my math, is $18 a year to the average household in property tax. And so the question is, for a very specific service, do you want the cost of that service borne by the entire community, or the people who specifically use that
But
service?
Alan, this is where I get into this is where I'm confused on, right? We have employees in the town that have set salaries that get paid, and there's no difference depending on how many applications for permits come before them or not. They get paid the same salary, the same cost. We can talk about the paperwork, we can talk about electronic systems, all of that, but unless I'm missing something, there is no $150,000 increase in the permitting process today. That's why I asked the question, what is causing this other than the board asking an assessment?
Inflation, that the cost of the labor, right, you have the same people, but those people, steps and lanes, operating budget every year goes up. When was the last time we looked at these fees?
Not since I've been here.
Not since I've been here.
So
Since I've been on.
10 years?
it's been more, if it's not since, it's over 12 years, right? So it's not like this is a regular thing where we're stepping over inflation.
Sure.
We've gotten to the point where the current fee structure is covering less of the cost of providing a service that's provided to a limited set of the town's population, and that shifts the burden over time to the entire tax base. And so by adjusting the fees to cover more of that direct cost, so it's not an indirect cost for the
But the
entire
town
taxpayers,
gets that back
we do it in a computer.
through the appraisal process.
But everyone
When I improve my value of my property,
Maybe. And
If you change your electric, does it improve your value of your property, or if you
if I put a new
replace a
electric,
window?
if I put a new electric survey, I go from a 100 amp service to a 200 amp service on my house, absolutely, that improves the value of my
Not-
property.
What if
I
the
think maybe
assessor,
that's the
what if the
cheapest
assessor doesn't see your house and see that improvement?
The assessor is here, and
No, no,
he
no, I-
disagrees about
you
it.
No, I know,
Well,
I know he
well,
is,
it's
but I'm
not-
just
it's not-
saying,
It's not the example. I mean,
just because you make improvements doesn't mean that those are seen immediately.
Well, can I just interject for a minute, if I may? I don't want
Help the
to
kids.
interrupt a
Go
good
ahead.
discussion, but
Yes, you may.
this is kind of a double answer, and one of them is the Shelby. So the most increase would be predominantly to the commercial enterprises, not residential. So I'm clear there. When I say 150, I was basing about 100,000, that increase would be on commercial properties. Especially in the last few years, and probably for the next year or so, maybe even 3, based on the scale of the commercial properties coming forward for the buildings, you're talking multiple millions of dollars of projects that are coming in. So that $1 increase per 1,000 is actually going to equate to most the increase of what I'll take in for permit fees, at least for the foreseeable future. So that's why I didn't have a real big offset between residential and commercial, because the commercial enterprises are already now bearing a lot of this additional cost. So that actually will benefit.
Yeah, and I did notice, I think, and I did the math here quick, it was roughly a 4% increase on residential over the remodel and the new construction, and then it's roughly a 12% increase on commercial new and remodel. So yeah, I see the burden is definitely weighted towards that side, so
Right.
I appreciate that.
Sorry to interrupt your good discussion.
No, I mean, and I think, I would just add, I mean, I think this is, I understand your point. I mean, I think this is standard. It's fees for service. It's what we do with the ambulance. It's what we do with
Liquor licenses.
liquor licenses, other things.
Any
So,
other
you know,
Board of
and
Health
in no case does it fully offset the cost, nor are we looking to do it, but it also is, you know, taking some of the burden off the taxpayers that aren't remodeling or doing anything and putting it to those that do. So, and I do think it was a goal we looked at because, you know, we're trying to find ways to lower the tax rate, and, you know, say 150,000 or $18 isn't a lot. It every little bit matters here, as we know, because it's only just begun what we started at town meeting. When the tax bills come out next year, I can guarantee every single one of us is going to get a number of emails and phone calls because people are going to forget how high it's going to be, and it's not going to be fun. So any way we can do this. So I thank you for doing it. I'm fully supportive, and we'll vote for these increases. I think it makes sense. I think it's not something we want to do every year. I think it's something that we probably should do more frequent than we do. And I think that's really why we, and not this board, and I agree with that, but why it was a goal put forth. Again, it was put forth to keep up with rising costs. And if we can, you know, raise our fees from it because of inflation, to help with that offset, because if we don't and costs rise, the burden on the taxpayer grows. And that's what we're trying to offset.
If I may, I just had one quick follow-up question. On your $25 fee for people who refuse to submit electronically, is it possible to not allow a non-electronic submission?
Well, so that's a debate depending on the electrician, plumbing. They argue that I have to legally allow a paper copy. So we reluctantly, rather than trying to argue the legal, whether I can legally do that or not, there's some debate to whether I can do that. So we still have some holdouts that refuse to do it electronically. We have kiosks. Staff is excellent about virtually doing it for them, sitting down. We've taken so many different ways to do it, but we still have a few holdouts. Not predominantly. It's probably a small percentage that still refuse to do it electronically.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, the inspectors themselves are saying that it's legally required. And my question to you is, if it's put into the kiosk, is there an option to print out that at that point to meet that obligation, as opposed to charging somebody $25?
It's the matter of the data entry. So if they hand us a piece of paper, staff now has to enter that.
Right.
If they go to the kiosk,
There
they're
are
putting it in
kiosks right there.
Right, and that's why
So the
and we're not
kiosk-
charging them.
Right, we're not charging them.
Correct, and I'm just saying if there's a legal requirement to have a paper copy of, no matter who.
No, it's the application itself. Some of the trades, electrical and plumbing specifically, they say that I have to legally allow them to give us a paper copy.
Paper.
The trade itself.
The trade itself is
gotcha.
arguing that I can't refuse them to submit paper. So we don't, I mean, it's not like the majority of them come in with paper.
Okay.
But there's still some holdouts that refuse to either use the kiosk, do it at home, have,
That's the nuance I was trying to understand.
So
Thank
instead of
you.
arguing whether we legally do it or not, we just say, no, we'll take paper, you're just going to pay $25.
Yeah, no, I get it now. The nuance was it the inspectors or was it the applicant?
It's the applicant.
So I got it now.
It's
Thank
100%
you.
the applicant. Trust me,
All
there's
right.
nobody in our staff that wants to do the data entry.
That's good to hear.
And to be honest with you, the electronic system has been very successful and spectacular. And fire department uses it predominantly now. Conservation is using it. Engineering is working on trying to use it. So we're getting more and more departments. I'm hoping to have EDC use it. So we continue to expand the use of it. So we're trying to get away from paper as much as we can because it just adds to the overall cost.
What's cost there? It's cost of storage requirements, and that's the one and storage space
Yeah,
that we
please,
can't find.
Yeah, let's not even go down the storage space thing with paper, but anyway, sorry.
Great.
Would you like
Any
a motion?
question? I like a motion, yeah.
Move to adjust building department fees as presented.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, 4-1, 5 being present. Thank you. Fred, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time.
Can I just address the comment about the town double dipping? The market value or appraised value is different than the assessed value and how that all works. So just because you do certain things in your home doesn't mean that automatically translates to an increase in assessed value.
I get that.
Okay.
I understand it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next item on the agenda, item 9, approval of management analyst communications assistant job description, amendment of classification plan. Christie
I'm gonna
and/or
start.
Kim on this one.
So as the board is aware, Karen Bain Morgado in our office is retiring. And so we have an opening we will have an opening in the confidential administrative assistant position. In preparation for that, Kim and I have evaluated the workload and have distributed some of the workload into other positions in our office, or are planning to do that, and creating, instead of a second confidential administrative assistant position, a management analyst / communications assistant position. We feel this is a very common type of position, maybe all differing titles throughout the country, frankly, but is a very common position where it's very sort of project-based. And so the individual would be given certain projects, and one of their sort of areas of project work is around communications, community engagement, participation, things like that. We feel like this really answers some needs that we've identified in our office, but also answers some needs that are identified in the non-public safety staffing study in connection with the need for communications and potentially a public information officer, and it meets that need with no increase to the budget. So Kim's going to talk a little bit more specifically about the job description.
Just get to that. So one of the things, if it's helpful in looking at the job description, really talks about functional responsibilities, the nature of the work to be performed. We looked back at some of the projects and things that have gone on in the recent past or that are going on that would be the type of projects that we would envision this position would be involved in. So if it's helpful, I can just quickly run down some of those. So one of the things that's called out, this position would help advance work in developing performance measures. It's one of the things in the GFOA budget award program. The budget document, we'd like to strengthen performance measures that are developed for each of the departments, and we feel this person could help both departments identify, track, report performance measures, and do so in a way that we have some consistency across departments. The fee study that, Fred was here talking about, and we've had the departments involved in, that's been a deep dive, reaching out to communities, our data dashboard communities. It's one example where many of the projects, special projects we take on now, we spend a lot of time contacting those communities. That would have been a great task for this role. I don't know if you all recall, a couple of years ago, it was pre-pandemic, we were involved in the Municipal Vulnerability Planning Grant process. That was a project that was heavily administrative. We had to go through certain steps, complete that process to be eligible for the action grants. This, again, something that probably would have been well suited for this role. Waste Management Task Force has a request for information that it recently issued. This role could assist with the analysis. I think some of the pieces I see under the communications in providing some consistency with our departments. There are some places where we could probably provide some templates and formats so that things have a more uniform look and feel. So while departments may still be developing things, this person would be kind of eyes and ears, seeing things before they go out, but also help in promoting the work that's being done. Everything from, increase our social media posts, publicizing events, town events, everything from, just documents that we're producing. We're trying to have them look more sophisticated, include graphics, and just, again, that similar look and feel. We also have been, as you're well aware, doing a lot of policy updates lately. Again, a lot of those are reaching out, finding out what policies exist in other communities, pulling from various policies. So things like our facility use policies, alcohol on town property, outdoor dining, those are all areas where this role could assist. One of the things we're going to talk about is another agenda item, our municipal aggregation program. It's not a heavy lift, but there are some points in time where we're contacted and some actions have to be taken. We've talked about going forward with potentially an internal in-house update of our strategic plan. We have funding to do the senior needs assessment, so those are all the types of projects that this individual in this role would likely be assisting with. So the job description is heavy on, they provide analytical support, somebody who has good communication skills, both in writing, framing, developing, helping us frame issues, identify options, and kind of pulling things together. I don't know if there are any specific questions.
I would just add that one of the other responsibilities of this position is to be responsive to some citizen inquiries, and also so through that work and also through the project work, they're engaging in things that are important to the town at that moment, and so really working through how to best communicate that out. Because I know often, as an example, and it's a simple one, is that often we'll talk about things, obviously, that are, happening in town, and the question always is that information on the website? So making sure that the information is always available on the website, that it's appropriately placed in a place where people can find it, because I know that's we struggle with that. So the communication component really does go hand in hand with this sort of project-driven management analyst position. And as we said, it's a position that you would find in other municipalities throughout the country.
We say throughout the country, including here, examples
Yes.
of here.
Yeah.
We have
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Actually, we pulled this job description from Grafton because they currently have this position. We pulled other ones; they just didn't have a similar title. I don't know which states, which municipalities we grabbed.
Yeah,
from,
I probably found almost a dozen job descriptions from different municipalities within Massachusetts, and then also nationally. International City County Manager Association had dozens and dozens of them listed. And they're all very similar in nature.
Thanks. Okay, questions?
Just make a comment.
Sean?
Oh, I just have a comment. I think this is terrific. There aren't a lot of sort of entry points into town government where you can get a broad understanding of how town government works. And so I think this is an excellent opportunity for somebody who is interested in getting into town government to learn. I had one question. In the summary, it mentions that the position is an H3, and the recommendation is an H4.
I was going to let you know the proposed motion has a typo.
Oh, that's supposed
In
to be
the-
a 3.
Yes, I think
Okay.
it's reflects 3 everywhere except the key, the critical.
Yeah.
Because I just read those.
I would have pointed it
That's a
out,
good
but
catch.
yeah.
Our management analyst might find that before it came to you.
Sean's looking.
I wanted to make sure you all read it. You win, Sean.
I'll just make a comment. I think it's an excellent reuse of a position. I think this will really benefit the town, so I'm really supportive of your creativity on converting this position to this type of role, and I think it will bring a lot of value to the work you all are doing, and certainly help the board in the work that we need to be doing as well, so thank you.
Thanks.
So I'm glad to hear this is a common nature of a job description, because my first read, being in a technical field, generally the analysts and the engineers, you never want them talking to the customer because they don't have the communication skills. But given the scope of the role, it's very consultative, and hearing that it is common, becoming more common to have this type of role, I'm not as concerned about. You're going to find someone with both those analytical skills and consulting skills who also can fill the communication role. And you mentioned that in changing this position, other of her responsibilities for that position are being delegated off, because I know there's a lot of work around liquor licenses and other licensing and parking and stuff, so all of that has a home.
Right, so when we added the HR coordinator position, maybe a year and a half ago, we had included within that job description, and sort of thinking through how this, might play out, that some of the insurance roles of that current position, and then so some of that stuff will move over under Joan in that HR coordinator role. Seal and Karen have the same job description, so Seal certainly is well versed in the liquor licensing and convicts and things like that. So that will just shift over. Trying to think of some other pieces of that. Other things we've been sort of working through, but those are really sort of the major pieces of that position.
Okay, thank you.
Shelby?
So I think that the creativity is interesting. I struggle with sort of the expectation of this position, to Alan's point about looking, finding that person who is, kind of can analyze data and research and set, benchmarks, and then having both the hard skills and the soft skills to really, kind of fulfill what we've all talked about at many times, kind of the need for improved communications and community engagement, and I think there were some great examples provided. So I would be interested in seeing some of the other, job descriptions that came to create this one, and some other examples in the towns. I'm not there yet to say that we should move forward with this. I'm not sure that, I don't know. I see this as two very different positions, not as one person with the right skill set. I think that you're looking for a gem in the rough, and it's going to be hard to find that person.
Can I, so if you look under where we have the educational requirements, we identified the sort of preferred fields of study or the degrees.
Yep.
This job description is very much in line with what a lot of public administration and public policy programs are.
Teaching.
This is what they're teaching, and this is what they are producing. Someone with this, what seems like a disparate or a diverse skill set. So I'm encouraged that there are candidates out there. We do have local MPA programs. You know, we're looking at, this is typically the type of position you would have somebody either with a bachelor's in public administration, public policy, or perhaps an MPA or a master's in public policy. And I personally have a comfort level that's my background, and I know that's what the programs are, you know, this is what they're producing.
Yeah, I'll just add I think, I appreciate you doing this. I think it's thinking creatively, it's thinking about efficiencies. You know, I'm happy with the communications piece, any piece to get us communications. I still would love a full-time one. I'm going to keep pounding the table until people vote me out of here. But this is a start, and I think it's that Shelby, I appreciate your piece, and I appreciate the response back that I don't know about bachelor's in public administrations and public policy, but to hear what you're saying, I think comforts me on that side. So I appreciate it. I trust you guys for putting together what you think you need in the office and what can benefit, tying it back again to the non-public safety staffing study, exactly what we asked you to do. So I'm supportive of this at this time, and more confident now that we can find the right person to fill it.
I just wanted to add that this isn't sort of someone who's going to be doing that full, what you might think of as a PIO position. It's not like if we have an emergency event in town or if there's a speaking engagement, they're the face of the town. That's obviously, my job and the job of the chiefs and whoever is, should be speaking at that time. And so it's someone who's really just sort of helping with creating these opportunities for public engagement and planning, which, as Kim mentioned, is exactly what someone who's maybe looking to become a town manager or do some other public administration position would be doing and learning.
That's helpful too, because one of the things that we've heard is, and it's been in the papers, is just the lack of candidates out there as we look into the future for town positions, especially town manager positions. And the other thing we've talked about within departments is career pathing, and this, to what you just said, that I didn't realize that, so that was helpful as well, as where we can create career paths for folks through this kind of more that entry level coming in. You can go to assistant town manager. So
that's often what you see these positions. Often somebody may come in, hold them for a couple of years, and then they move on to an assistant role or continue down their career path.
Perfect.
I'll move to approve the management analyst communications assistant job description as presented and amend the classification plan to add the position at grade H3.
Second that?
Okay. All those in favor?
So there was a motion. Can we have
Questions, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Discussion.
Sorry.
I just,
Further discussion.
before we sort of move to a vote, again, I appreciate the creativity. I'm not going to support this because I think that it needs a little more time to germinate, but, so I just want to be clear why I'm not going to be supporting it at this time.
Thank you. Any other questions? And I apologize for doing that.
No, that's okay. No worries.
Part of I was pushed to
I know, we're
not
running,
keep asking
we're
for
running
further
long.
comments.
No, it's fine.
So, okay, so we have the motion, a second. All those in favor? And opposed? So it's 4-1, 5 being present. Okay, next on the agenda, item 10, letter of support for the Complete Neighborhoods Partnership Grant application.
So I had mentioned this to the board at your first meeting in April, that on the 15th, we would be submitting an application. an application for the Complete Neighborhood Partnership Grant. This really came out of discussion with that working group that Patrick sits on, with the chair of the planning board, the community development director, the town planner, myself, and then another member of the planning board. And so this came up as an opportunity because it's something that they're sort of targeting to MBTA communities. And so we put together the application, really targeting the downtown as an area that we wanted to focus on in terms of technical assistance and further planning, which is also something that we've discussed with that working group, but also came out of the master plan. And so we've already submitted this grant. It would be about $150,000 in technical assistance, which is what the grant would provide if we were awarded. And so I provided a letter of support, the Affordable Housing Trust provided a letter of support, and CMRPC did as well. But we were advised that we could submit letters of support following the submission of the application, and so we would ask that the board authorize the chair to draft and send a letter of support.
Drafted too?
I was going to say, we're going to give Ian some work. Perfect. No,
I need
just
that.
kidding.
We just don't have an
I need that
example for you.
communications person.
Yep.
Can I just ask a question, just as a reminder? The funding, the potential funding, which is not insignificant, is there a match?
No.
No, there's not. And I know that the money doesn't come directly to the municipality. It goes to the vendor that would be working on.
That's typically how it works with technical assistance.
Okay.
This is a new grant program, so they're sort of working through how it's all gonna shake out.
No, first of all, thank you
Yeah.
for doing all the work, because just looking through what was provided in our packet, it's significant and probably a great role for the position we just talked about to support. So I bet you wish you had that person now. Yeah, so I'm fully supportive of writing that letter and having Ian do it.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, when I move to authorize the chair to send a letter of support for the Complete Neighborhood Partnership Grant.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? It's 505 being present. Okay. Continuing on with board policies, item 11 here, electronic sign board policy. Is this you, Patrick?
Yep, I'll go from here. So I just want to just remind the board that this is the last of the policies that we took on to review. So good to
So
be.
you're happy with that?
Yes, we're good to be the ends, and I'm sure at some point we'll go back and look at them again, but see what else is out there. But just wanted to clarify, there's two primary sections to the policy. So we cleaned up and I think added some more information in regards to the portable electronic signboard that is operated by the DPW that we see occasionally at the downtown, the big orange one. So we added in some more clarity around what things can and cannot be on that. And specifically in item G, that other town department notices with the town manager approval could also be on that board. The second section is in regards to the other community notices and on the permanent electric signboard down on East Main Street. So this is to provide some clarity on what the priorities are of requests that come in and the types of requests that can be that are acceptable and that process for them to go through. So I'll pause there, see if there's any questions, comments.
I just had a comment, and it kind of was written, I think, up in the summary by the town manager, but back a number of years ago, when that sign went up, we had concerns from residents about, and businesses actually in downtown, about the frequent use of what they call an ugly sign in the downtown area, and the distractions for drivers, et cetera. So the goal with the sign on Lyman Street was to, take a lot of the non-emergency, I guess, signs there. So I guess the concern I have is to add back in the other town department notices. By adding more there, it creates more use there. And I just think that we heard feedback in the past. I looked at Christie to confirm or not, but I know that that was one of the things we heard many people say, it's ugly, it's distracting. We understand when you use it for special events, meaning town election, town voting, things, but the time, the goal of the select board, I think, in writing it was to limit the use of it and not overuse a portable sign.
Yeah, I think the additions here, because I think town meeting, election day, water conservation, and emergency notices, I think were, considered,
Water, yeah.
historically things that are, need. I think we added on the Department of Health notices because of COVID, right? We wanted to let
I think
people
that
know.
makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, and then we added in the National State Day of Celebration and Remembrance because we were, I think, trying to align it a little bit to signs on the Rotary policy as well as to how we kind of talk about these things. And then certainly item G is really at the discretion of the town manager. If there's something that she feels is necessary to communicate to the town on that particular message board. The comment in the summary information in regards to purpose for advertising for town events on the portable signboard, I think that's really what we're trying to accomplish with the permanent signboard down on East Main Street. So,
Right, my concern was the National and State Day of Celebration and/or Remembrance, so I don't, there's no example of that I can think of that we would have used it for since we created the Lyman Street, and so my only understanding of how that would work is if there were events for those dates, which we don't typically, currently don't use for.
sure.
So-
Is there, boy, I don't remember. For example, when we had our 300th celebration, did that board get used for that? Would we advertise that Memorial Day Parade is going to happen on
Well,
that?
so for example, I know that that it's becoming more of a tradition, the graduating class parade, would we want to have that sign be used there to say congratulations there versus the permanent sign?
Or on top of it, right? Both, right? I mean,
Or what?
Or both, right? You could,
Right,
could
right.
use it for both, yeah.
I mean, I'm comfortable with the town manager's discretion on that additional item, but if the town manager prefers not to have that,
Well, I think
so to
it's-
speak,
I think it's more
discretion
the
in
It's more
opening.
F that I'm not concerned about G, but.
It's just,
Yeah, I'm not sure what we would put there in F that would need to be there, but,
Right.
I mean, even like the block party, that's more of, well, that's G.
And typically, that's about traffic when we advertise, when something might be related to, say, the
Right.
block party or even the parade that you just talked about.
Yep.
It would be more about traffic.
Yeah, maybe the Rotary was
Rotary
closed
closed,
for
yep.
10
Yeah.
to 12, something like that. Some more emergency notice. So I guess my take is, I mean, I'm fine with that. I would just, I would
Strike.
recommend we strike F.
strike F.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want a motion to strike out, go ahead.
Well, I have another suggestion, but
Yep.
not at that part, so.
Okay. Actually, any other discussion on striking F? If not, shall we go with your other comment?
So I'm glad to see that we're adding about information and posting on the billboards on Route 9 or Mass Turnpike. Actually just learned through a recent request of that process that there's a document that talks about, help me out, Celia, the pixels and whatever, like the information. So I don't know if it's necessary, so it says here, all requests must be sent in any images. Should we be referencing, a link in it, to here's, it must be in this format, or just request it, information will be, the image has to be specific. So someone might do all the work to submit what they need to do and have the wrong content, or the wrong format.
They'll help us with that.
So I'm just wondering if, I mean, we're asking on the other billboard, we give 4 bullet points, and I'm just wondering if we should be clearer just to save our town manager and staff time of images that must be submitted have to be in compliance with this and follow this link, like kind of self-service, here's the policy, as opposed to send your request, then we'll send an email, we'll tell you, and here's the attachment, and
Sure, do we know what?
I don't care, I'm not doing the work, but I just try to like.
Yeah,
streamline.
no, does that help? Sure. Do we have, I'm not familiar with the agreement with Clear Channel, that was before my time, so I think we'd have to go back to that and see what was kind of outlined there and use that as the outline for
I think it's
this.
more what we have, right?
Well,
You have the-
right, so I think you could actually, you could actually probably strike calling out Clear Channel and RSA, just say the agreements, because I know that
That
it
could
actually did
change.
change hands at one point. But to your question, Patrick, they did provide us with specifications, so I think a link makes sense. A lot of times we don't get what's specified, or someone will just give us verbiage, and the art departments for both of these were very helpful in sort of creating something. So maybe not a requirement, but certainly information if someone's able to do that.
I thought we talked about not putting links because when the
Yeah.
links change, I thought
Yeah.
we could talk about policies
yeah.
not having links in them.
Or,
because-
I mean, maybe it's just,
We could do it
defunct
we could
areas.
just add it to the back of it when we post it.
Does it help you?
additional-
Maybe add it
pages.
as the- yeah.
Would it help you and your team to have that on this policy?
Seal has been managing it. Would it help you?
I think, in my opinion, just striking the names of the companies would be fine, because people are gonna reach out to get the free advertising through our office anyways, and I can then, or whomever, just
Send that out to them.
sends that information out. Where it gets tricky is when folks want a very specific billboard. And that's where the specifications have to be met if they don't, or if Clear Channel can't lift the very specific image that a group wants to use to then design, them for their graphic arts department to then design the bulletin as well. I think, what I'm saying is, I think it's fine the way it is, and just get rid of the names of the,
And if it falls outside of the agreement, you would see that, Christie, and say that this is not appropriate based on an agreement.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So
I
I
agree with
think,
that too.
but
I think the
you
other
could
piece that,
just-
sorry, when you put too much detail, technology's gonna change, things are gonna change, and I'm gonna have an outdated policy, so I think
Yeah.
leaving it more broad probably
But,
makes sense.
so maybe not put more verbiage in the policy, but just post it together in the link.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And then I guess the only other thing is that the email address is actually, would be Steela's. We don't have a town manager, so, we do, but, we don't have a town manager email address.
who are you?
So it would just be, cdoor@town.westboro.
We need to correct right now it's town manger, not town manager, office.
religions.
Where did I miss that?
When you added the words to,
I missed
sent
it
to
too.
the town when we took selectmen's out, it now says town mangers.
Oh, under the electric sign billboard there,
Okay.
electronic.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll move to approve the electronic sign board policy as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Well done, Patrick.
Patrick, thank you so much.
Thank you so
for-
much, Patrick.
Great job with that. Okay, next, municipal aggregation consultant contract. Christie.
I think, well, so we've worked with Peregrine. Let's start. We've worked with Peregrine since we started doing the municipal aggregation, and it's come before you a couple times to do extensions, and now we need to do a new contract. And so Kim is going to speak to that.
Sorry about that, Kim.
It's okay. So you have a sample agreement in your packet. The Peregrine works with us. The municipal aggregation program is heavily regulated by the Department of Public Utilities. Everything from a incredibly regulated competitive bidding process that they handle for us. You may recall it was April of 2020 that we had a new 3-year agreement with Dynegy, which is the energy provider. So they handle that whole process. They handle all of the reporting. They handle communications and promotion of the municipal aggregation program. They're a great partner. They have really helped us in trying to achieve some of the goals in the climate action plan. We currently have 3 options in the aggregation program. One of them is a 100% green option. We have a budget option as well as a standard option. So they're a partner when questions come up. They never hesitate to try and help us think through things that might not be directly in the scope of the work that they do. So we've been very happy. They're easy to work with. They're a resource for the public. So if somebody calls our office and has questions, what is this municipal aggregation program? or calls because they've gotten other flyers from other companies and want to understand, we can refer them right to Peregrine has a call center. So all of their questions can get answered specific to us, specific to other things they may have received. So they've been great. What we're looking at in the contract, I just want to point out a couple of things that my contact there framed as really administrative convenience. The last contract was signed with Peregrine. They actually now have a subsidiary that deals specifically with their municipal aggregation clients because that is a big chunk of the work that they do. So you will notice that the contract is not with Peregrine. It's Mass Power Choice is their subsidiary. They also deleted references to this procurement is exempt from 30B, and they just thought it was unnecessary to state that in the contract. And you'll note that it is structured similarly to the current contract. It's a 5-year agreement with 2 options to extend for 1 year.
Those are our options.
Yes. Yep. I didn't know if there might be any other questions.
Great. Any questions from the board?
Just related, but I wouldn't expect you to have this information. At some point, it would be helpful to understand if, how many households are using the aggregation program and what the breakdown is across those 3.
Okay.
Just be helpful to understand if we made progress.
Is there a motion?
Sure. I move to approve the contract between the town and Mass Power Choice LLC for a 5-year term commencing on May 15th, 2022, and providing for 2 independent options to renew or extend the term for 1 year each at the town's sole discretion, and further to authorize the town manager to execute the agreement as presented.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? 5-0, 5 being present.
Nice to have a good partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
I love the
and for
fact that the
people,
call center there.
and for people who are watching, when you get the letter in the mail saying you can save on your electric bill, call and check. Because
Call the town
Call the town.
first. Call the town.
first before you opt out of this program. I got a letter 3 days ago that said they were going to save me 50% over national grid rates. It's actually 50% more expensive. And so don't get cheated. Check with us first.
And right on the town's website, on the homepage, on the left-hand side, there's a big graphic, Westborough Power Choice. If you click on that, lots of information, including the phone number to call to get those questions answered.
Perfect.
Okay, item 13, 231 Turnpike Road, better known as the Regal Cinema RFP.
So this is the RFP draft based on our last discussion. As I noted in the packet, I do have 2 questions for council that I haven't received feedback on yet. One is really just about the structure of the price proposal and how that will be separated out or not. And the other is making sure that the PNS is clear, that once you sign the PNS, even before closing, that whoever you enter into that PNS with would be responsible for maintenance of the property. That's sort of we didn't talk about that last time, but it does follow along with the concern about sort of how long it might take them to get permits and things like that.
You meaning day one, like
Once,
Yep.
Well, yeah, as soon
Once
as
the PNS.
once this PNS is signed. Yeah.
And when you say breaking out of the, you mean like separate envelopes or like
That's
the physical?
typically, yeah, so
Yeah.
that's typically how it's done but the way that this is structured, it's the way it is within the evaluative criteria. I just have a question about how we would apply that. But this is not different than what we did last time. So those are some outstanding questions. And then you also have this on your executive session. So I didn't expect that you would be ready to approve it tonight, but I wanted to do a check-in and see if we're close. If this draft reflects what what we did last time, and if there's any additional outstanding questions or changes.
Anything?
I found a typo. I just wanted to make you aware of. See if I didn't write it down, so let me see if I can quickly find it.
reflected what our discussions were, so.
Great.
It was just a typo. I'll find it.
Okay.
It's not.
And when we give you the updated one, we'll have all the dates in it, so, because we'll have a better idea.
So what is the plan, so we know we're going to executive session, would the plan be to try to vote on this at our next meeting?
I think so,
Okay.
yep.
Perfect.
Great.
Okay.
10th?
What's that?
May 10th?
Yes,
Yep.
yep, May 10th.
Okay, next, request for appointments. We did the first one out of, and I appreciate folks doing that. So our second one is for a youth commission appointment for Sahana Gokul.
I can get that for you.
Can you?
Yep. Move to appoint Sahana Gokulakrishnan as a student member to the Youth Commission for a term to expire June 30th, 2022.
Second that?
So just one comment.
Yes,
So I went to the Youth Commission meeting last month where she presented her case, and she did a wonderful job. She is bright and articulate, and I know that Kara is really looking forward to her becoming a full-time member.
Awesome.
So this just takes her through the end of this year.
Yes. And then
Intention to read.
I think she's a junior. I think they would then add them for another year.
Okay.
But another member moved out of town, family moved out of town, so this came up.
I'm sorry, do we have a second on that?
Yes.
Okay, moved and seconded. Anything else? All those in favor? It's 5-0, 5 being present. Okay. Next is request to approve meeting minutes of March 22nd, 2022.
So moved.
Seconded?
Okay, any comments, corrections, additions? All those in favor? 5-0, 5 being.
Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
Okay, issues and correspondence of the select board. Patrick? Caught you off guard.
No, I'm ready for you, I think. May is National Mental Health Month. The Energy Fair is this weekend, so that fits nicely into our conversation a few minutes ago. It's this Saturday, 1 to 5 at Mill Pond. There'll be several presenters and a wide variety of booths and information for folks to learn more about energy options and all sorts of different great technologies. So I look forward to seeing everybody there. Unplugged next week is also going on. There's events around town, and you can find more information at the Westborough Connects website.
Perfect. I'm going to move things around. Sean,
Oh,
really
okay.
confusing people.
All right. The library, the library building committee, the meeting was moved to Thursday, so no update there yet. The Senior Disabled Taxation Relief Committee met on April 13th. It was the first meeting in quite some time, so it was sort of a kickoff. And our town assessor was there, sort of leading the proceedings, and provided home rule petitions, examples from about 10 communities that we are all reviewing, and we'll be discussing that for our May 12th meeting. Our target is to have something on the fall town meeting warrant. And then thirdly, the high school is doing Les Miserables this weekend, if you're interested, Thursday, Friday, Saturday at 7 p.m. and Sunday at 2. I recommend
They
it.
always put on a phenomenal show.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Alan?
Okay. Very quickly, follow-up related to COVID-19 relief. It is not well publicized, but the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has a fairly substantial sum of money for mortgage relief. So if there are homeowners who, because of COVID-19, have missed 3 or more mortgage payments, you may qualify for grants from the state. On the Affordable Housing Trust's webpage on the website, under News and Announcements, there's a link with information that will also take you to the state website and information about qualification, eligibility, and the application.
Alan, quick question. Do you know if that applies to rental too, or is it just mortgages?
So there are other programs already in place for rental, folks who are still struggling with rent. You can receive up to 2 years of rent and up to $2,500 towards past due utility bills. This program is specifically for mortgage holders in single-family homes and who own units in buildings with 4 or fewer units.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Just a couple things for me. Unfortunately, the Rec Commission, which I am the liaison to, is meeting tonight. They tend to somehow meet with us, so I was not able to attend, but there was going to be a golf, a major piece of it was a golf course update, among other things. I'll try to get the information from the minutes there, but unfortunately I couldn't make it. Tomorrow morning at 8:30, we have a municipal building committee meeting, which I'll be attending and can provide comments next time. And then the final one is, it's planned, and I'd say it's still in the works, but it looks pretty firm. I shouldn't say it, but for it wasn't annual. Last year they did a takeout, but for the Troop 100 Boy Scouts, to do the senior citizen dinner in person, Saturday, May 14th. So that is in the works at the senior center, and information is coming out probably as we speak and very soon. But always a great event for the troop and the seniors to really interact. It's fun time. Music played by the scouts, the students, for entertainment, and just really good experience for the seniors to get a nice spaghetti dinner for free. So encourage seniors that are there. It's working through the senior center to sign up, so that will be advertised on their side. That's all I had.
One more?
Oh,
Yep, appreciate it.
did I skip over you?
You did, that's okay.
Confuse yourself again.
I did. I thought you did.
Get all fancy with the order, and that's what happens.
I know. Confused. I really confused myself.
So, update from the Hockomock Pond Reuse Committee. That committee continues to meet and is making progress. There's a recent discussions really have focused on the need, the likely need that ultimately would come before this board to have a licensed site professional assist with what the possible kind of uses could be, limitations, et cetera. I won't get into detail here, but that would be something that would be coming to the board perhaps in the summer months. But it's a complex site, and we're trying to be very thoughtful about what that process is before we open it to the public for input that for uses that might be really creative but just aren't practical. As a member of the CMMPO, I've been attending those meetings. They're once a month, right in the throes of the TIP process, which has more acronyms than I can possibly even begin to understand. But reviewing projects for 23 to 27, and that's really been the focus of the last couple months of meetings. Certainly if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to share. And if you're not already on their distribution list, you can get their minutes and read at your heart's content. The Active Transportation Safety Committee, Christy thankfully has been attending those meetings. It's been great to have her there. The committee has been very active in hearing resident concerns across a number of areas. Sidewalks, need more of them, they need to be fixed. Truck exclusion questions, speeding, all of those things. So lots going on in that committee. Christy, as she oversees the BWALT's task force, whatever, has been, providing information back to the ATSC and kind of liaisoning. So that's been a helpful addition, and work being done there. The Appalachian Service Project, I believe, is having a food drive. Food drive for the this weekend, right? Saturday, you can still sign up. Does anyone know the email address or anything offhand?
It's
It's on the website.
Okay.
Yeah.
ASP, Google ASP Food Drive, you'll find it. And then on Saturday, May 1st, the Rotary Club is having a Mayfest fun run, 5K, walk, crawl, stroll, and also a kids dash. Go to the Rotary Club and sign up. Our registration starts at 8 a.m. or you can do it online, obviously. The race is at 9 a.m. and I'm sure all of you will finish, by 9:30.
Crawling.
All right.
I didn't finish the turkey trot that fast.
Can I just wanted to add one thing. When Shelby was talking about the ATSC, one of the things that's come before the ATSC, and I think the board also recently got an email about concerns of the Parkman West Main intersection. And so in talking to Chief Laurie, he shares the concern, but wants to sort of watch what our options might be. And so the ATSC is looking at some sort of town-wide, really look at these intersections, but as an interim step, the DPW director has recommended maybe coning off a couple of the parking spaces by that intersection just to see if it improves line of sight. So you might see that in the next couple weeks.
Would that be on both sides, in front of the library and in front of the, or just in?
I think it's just in front of Forbes, but so.
I did forget one item.
Okay.
Okay,
One
just,
last.
well,
Because
just,
I forgot you can have it.
okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to remind the public that things like utility poles, now that we're out and we're all walking around and the weather's better, and that utility poles and, the light poles are public property. And so you can't just post something on there. So you can't post my cat is lost, or I'm having a yard sale, or, I support Shelby Marshall for office, or anything like that. You can't do that. It's illegal. It's public property. Don't do it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay. Sean, you?
Question?
Yes.
So as a citizen in town, if we happen to pass by a utility pole that has illegal public things posted on it, is it our civic duty and permission to remove such things?
I would suggest you don't, but to call the DPW. But or the police, I don't know which one. Police?
Either.
Either.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, and I think really that's to protect you as a citizen from someone,
Because you also may not know if permission's been granted for that.
Right. Thank you.
Depending on
there are
what it is.
places where things can be posted with permission?
Well, there's certain areas in town where the board can give permission to put up signs.
On utility poles?
No, not
On
utility
utility
poles.
Okay, I was asking about utility.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I move to enter into an executive session under Mass General Law 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Department of Public Works Union, under Mass General Law 30A, Section 21A6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate at 231 Turnpike Road and 0 Ruggles Street, and under Mass General Law 30, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to act under the authority of the Select Board to approve the executive session meeting minutes of March 8th, 10th, and 22nd of 2022.
I declare that an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the board's bargaining and negotiating position, and that the board will not be reconvening in an open session. Can I have a second to the motion to go into executive session?
I
Second.
second.
You can't second, you made the
Oh, I can't, sorry.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Welch, yes?
Edinburgh, yes.
Johnson, yes.
EO, yes?
Actually, yes.
We are in executive session.
Thank you, Westborough TV.